Hey guys, how's it going? And today we finally have the Poppy Playtime full combo video, whatever you want to call it, all parts. I don't remember what I put in the title, but it's going to be every single Poppy Playtime rewrite video that I've done, so all 6 parts combined into one longer video for you guys. So if you have seen them and you're like, hey, I want to rewatch them, but you don't want to have to go click on every single video, you can just watch this one and watch them straight through. And if you haven't seen them, this is a good way to just get all of the main parts without having to go and find and watch each video. So it's just kind of something fun. I did the same kind of thing with my FNAF novel rewrites. I combined them all into one video, and I just think it's kind of something fun to do. So that's what I decided to do. Now they will be in video release order, so the release order that I did upon releasing the videos, so do keep that in mind as well. But yeah, this would be kind of something fun to do. So anyway, don't want to have a super long intro. Hope you guys enjoy this kind of fun video. I know it's content that is kind of just repackaged into a new video, but I still think it's kind of fun. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy, and yeah. So the game starts off in much the same way, with an old advertisement for Playtime Co. It introduces Poppy Playtime herself, and Elliot Ludwig talks about all the stuff that the Poppy Playtime doll can do. The tape goes on with him explaining the factory and everything that goes on there, and it ends with a very similar thing where we get to see the Poppy on the wall, but Elliot tells us to come on down to the factory. And Elliot also goes on to say that here at the Playtime factory, it feels like home. And the second he says home, the tape ends. So the tape is very similar, but I wanted to make it feel a little bit almost uncanny and creepy and eerie, which is why I added in the creepy, like it feels like home, because it is home to some people. I'm sure you guys can put that together, but that's kind of why I made that change. But on the whole, it's pretty much the exact same thing. It's just a tape of Elliot Ludwig talking to us. So after the tape ends, we then get the shot of all the stuff scattered out on the table, like in the base game. You have the little like piece of mail, and then there's the letter, and then there's the tape. But here, there's also a set of keys that were sent to us as well. That way we can kind of get around different parts of the facility. We can actually get into the factory. It's sort of just a way to excuse us being able to open some doors within the place without having to explain and have puzzles for every single section. We just get a set of keys at the start, boom, bada book, bada boom, you're good to go. However, there is one other notable change with this particular section, and that is on the table in the far corner, kind of obscured by shadows, is a picture in a frame, and it's just sitting on the table, and you can see part of the picture. There's a man and a younger boy standing outside of the Playtime Co. factory, and the man's face is obscured in the shadows, but you get to see the boy. And we don't know anything about them yet at this point, but it might be more important later on, particularly in later chapters. So that is the first opening part of the game to kind of like get you introduced like in the base game. Not too many crazy changes here, just a few small little details and notes to make things either feel a little creepier or to set up some more stuff. After this, the screen cuts and we get the title card. We open back up into gameplay and we find ourselves just outside of the Playtime factory. So we're actually outside this time. This was a concept I think that they were going to originally explore. There's like some cut maps that show the outside of the factory. I thought it would be fun to include us walking into the factory from the outside. We get to see more of it. We get to see the scale of it, and we get to see some of the surroundings. We also see that there's like a forest out a little ways, and that the parking lot itself is like very overgrown since it's been like 10 years since anybody's been there. So time has taken somewhat of a toll on the surrounding area. But we get to explore. It's dark, it's nighttime outside, and you basically just get to walk up to the door and go inside because there's like nothing else you can do outside. It's just there for show. So you go up, you have your set of keys that you got, you can open the front door, you walk inside, and you enter that main lobby area, which is the exact same lobby as in the base game. However, there is another change here as well. So you still go to the gift shop, is that what it is, where you see the train and it's doing its little loop and you got to put the code into the thing and get into the office area. But you go into the security office, and instead of you getting your grab pack there, you actually get an all-access pass that allows you to enter the main atrium of Playtime Co. So you get the pass, you go in, and you get to see Huggy Wuggy himself standing in his like waving pose, just like in the base game. And here you can also walk around, learn some more things, press the little button that will play Huggy's theme, and just kind of see the area and the atrium. Now everything is dark, but you can still look around and see all the stuff going on. But above the doorway to what is called the production wing, we see a blue hand scanner. But we don't have a grab pack yet. That's when we hear a little jingle, and we turn around and you can see that Huggy is now holding a key, like he does in the base game. However, this one, we can't grab with the grab pack, so we actually need to pick up those little boxes of like the smaller Huggies and throw them at the key to knock it out of Huggy's hand. So there is some throwing mechanics here. So you throw the boxes at his hand, he drops the key, you take the key, and it tells you that you collected a theater key. So you can go over to the doors to the theater and open them up. You open up the doors to the theater, you walk inside, and you enter said location. So this section is the first, I would say, major change to the game as a whole. We're introducing an entire new location. I think on the one hand, this helps to set up a little bit of a longer gaming experience and a little bit more of a unique one, having to go to a different location rather than just staying within the same Playtime Co. factory feel the entire time for the first chapter. It gives you a different feel, and it also allows for more lore and secrets to be discovered in a new location, because the theater location here is very similar to the one we see in Project Playtime, probably a little bit different, but a similar design to the one we'll see there. And it's trashed. It's like tables and chairs thrown all over the place. The walls are damaged. There's signs of fire damage in places. Like, it's trashed because something crazy happened here. The theater incident, which will obviously get talked about more in later chapters, is set up here as an event that happened. And alongside that, as you explore the place, because it's a little bit more open world, you can go around and explore, you can find a VHS tape with Leith Pierre and Stella Graber talking about the theater incident, and that something or someone let a bunch of the experiments out while at a public showing, causing a mass hysteria event and quite a few casualties as a result. And so they talk about it a little bit. Obviously, there's no hints towards like the doctor or anything later on that gets talked about in chapter 4, but it sets up that, hey, there's a lot of things not right about the Playtime place. So it just sets up more description for the theater incident later on. But you can go around, you can find that and some other stuff. But when you head into the main theater itself, to where you see the stage, you see none other than Braun standing on the stage, like the smaller version of him that we got teased in chapter 1's trailer, but then he wasn't in the game. Here, I wanted to put him in the game and have him at least be there so that he's represented because he was in the trailer. I thought it'd be kind of fun. However, Braun here doesn't really do much. His head stays locked onto you, so he's constantly staring at you, but he doesn't jump scare you or anything. He's just kind of there to be a little creepy, like, ooh, this Braun with these hollow eye sockets is just staring at you, and he's constantly looking at you, but he doesn't really do anything. He's just standing there. He's just supposed to be a little spooky, but a little fun. But what you'll notice is you'll head on stage to look at Braun, presumably, and behind the stage, you can see a gated off room with grab packs in it. That's your ultimate goal. So you'll go backstage and you'll have to solve a little puzzle to knock over like a stage prop that will fall into the gated area, breaking it open and allowing you to grab a grab pack. I don't really have like details on whatever the puzzle would be, but I would assume it'd have to do something with like messing with the ropes backstage that move like the curtains and things. I'm not a stage performer. I don't know how that works, but there'd be some sort of puzzle that involves that. You knock it over, you go in, you grab your grab pack, which has both hands, and so now you're good to go. So you get your grab pack, you head back out, and you can go back to the main atrium. When you head back out to the main atrium, you will now see that Huggy is gone. Ooh, just like the base game, he's gone, he's not there anymore. and in his place is actually one of those little Huggy toys, and it's just kind of slumped on the floor. So you can go over, use the blue hand scanner, it doesn't work, it causes a power surge, but this time the power surge kind of blasts open the power room door because you don't get the key from Huggy anymore. It just bursts the door open because it's weak door security at Playtime Co. or something like that, I don't know. Just another reason for the door to open other than Huggy having to give you like another key or something like that. Also, our ring of keys, I guess, doesn't open this room. So the door gets like pushed open by the power surge or whatever. You go inside and you do your little power puzzle thing. It's like the simpler one, like in the base game, to kind of get you introduced to the power puzzles. It's got the Kissy Missy poster. It's basically just the exact same. So you do your little power puzzle, you go back out, you use the blue hand scanner, and the door slowly opens, and at the end of the hall, you can just catch a glimpse of Huggy walking down said hallway that you need to enter. So you go down there, you follow behind him, you enter the side hallway, he's obviously not in there, you go through, you get the same little steam pipe jump scare, because they have to have those, and as you walk through, you'll then enter the storage area, pretty much exactly like the base game. So this storage room section is also pretty similar, pretty much the exact same as the base game. However, instead of you needing to find batteries to power up the crane to get the red hand, then you use both hands to open the scanner, allowing you to go through. Here, you just need to collect the batteries to open and activate the conveyor system, because once it's activated, it'll open up the door, allowing you to leave. So it's pretty similar. You just go find the batteries. Huggy will also peek out from one of the vents at some point, like he does in the base game. You use it, you activate the conveyor, you go through. At some point, the conveyor shuts down. There's a power surge. You do the little power puzzle within the conveyor, like the base game, and then you move on to the make a friend room. So this part does have some very similar elements to the base game. However, a change that I wanted to make was to have you actually have more to do in this area, because in the base game you kind of just show up, you make your cat bee toy, and then you leave. Like, there's not a lot going on here. I wanted to add at least just a little bit more stuff for you to do here. So you still have to do the power puzzle at some point, you still have to make your cat bee toy, but you also need to find parts to fix the 3 major machines. And these parts would be scattered amongst a few random locations that would be randomized every time you play the game, so that it's a slightly unique experience every time you play. But you'll go around, you'll find these parts, there's like 1 or 2 per machine, you put them in there, it's like a gear and a lever or something like that, you fix up the machines, you can go up to the catwalks, do your power puzzle, and get your cat bee toy. However, there is also a VHS tape here, just like in the base game, but this one isn't about Stella Graber like the base game has. This one actually introduces a new character by name. He doesn't actually talk, but this introduces a new character and sets up some more interesting story stuff that will play up later. So in this tape, we hear Leith Pierre, and he is talking to another person, which in later chapters will be revealed as Edward Ritterman. And they are talking about Elliot's death. And now that he's died, the company is passed on to Leith. He talks about how he's surprised that he was chosen to be the new head of the company and not Dr. Ron Whitman, who was very close to Elliot in like a father figure kind of role. So like Elliot was kind of like an adoptive father figure role to Dr. Whitman. So they were close in that regard. And Leith is surprised that Elliot didn't choose Dr. Whitman to be the new owner. And Edward Ritterman, who at this point is just the man because it doesn't have a name yet, it talks about how Leith is a much better successor. He knows what must be done in order to further the company. So it sets up Edward Ritterman as a bit more of an evil person as well. But they basically just talk about that and how Dr. Whitman has been kind of secluded ever since Elliot's died, and he's kind of been doing his own thing. So Dr. Whitman here is a new character I have created who has somewhat similar names to other people, but that's because I couldn't really think of anything crazy. But I wanted to give a new character here to kind of explore a relatively different aspect of things that we don't entirely see within the game. There's a little bit of it with Harley Sawyer and Elliot and a kind of similar thing, but I wanted to give a new character to explore and to have be brought up amongst different chapters as being important to some of the things going on. So that is Dr. Whitman. So we'll hear more from them later. So you can watch the tape and get some little lore stuff. But after you fix up the machines, you get your Cat Bee toy, you move on from that kind of stuff, you put it in the scanner, the door opens, you walk through, Huggy shows up and he's like, oh, I'm Huggy Wuggy, and then you have to run to the vents to escape him. Now, once you get inside the vents, you start to crawl through them, but you don't see any signs of Huggy. In the base game, you walk and he's like right there, and then you take another turn, and then he starts chasing you like it's right away. Here, there's a little bit of time. You're crawling through the vents, and there's nothing. You don't see him, you don't hear him, he's not around. But you walk up to a section of vent that is like a T section of vent. There's a path that goes forward and a path to your right. As you're walking forward, there's a door that closes pretty much right in front of your face, blocking the path straight ahead. And if you notice and you have a keen ear, you'll hear vent banging noises coming from behind you. You'll turn around and you'll see Huggy is now chasing you, spawning in from behind you. I wanted to make a little bit of a change to Huggy here to make him slightly scarier. One, he kind of teleports around places. Like, you see him directly in front of you, and then he takes a quick turn, and then all of a sudden, like 2 seconds later, he's like a good ways away from where he was before, and you see him coming, which I guess tells you that there's going to be a big chase happening. But I wanted to kind of scare people a little bit more, catch people off guard. The door closes in front of you, and then Huggy's like right there. Now, obviously, he's not like directly behind you, because otherwise it'd be like a constant jump scare loop. But he'll get closer. He'll spawn in right as that door closes, and if you're not paying attention, he'll just start chasing you down, and you won't notice, and you'll get jump scared. So it's to kind of catch people off guard the first time around. Yes, it does mean that I am intentionally trying to get people jump scared the first time around. I think everybody should get jump scared at least once. So that's kind of why it's here. But it's also to set up like, hey, he followed us into the vents. That's why he's behind us. So he starts chasing you, and it's pretty similar to the typical vent chase that we get in the base game. He's kind of just moving fast. You bob, you weave, you go through different areas, and eventually you make your way out onto one of the catwalks in that huge like pit room area. But here's also another slight change. Instead of dropping a box on top of Huggy and like kind of breaking some of the catwalk and whatever, there's actually a broken section of catwalk that we need to peel up with the grab pack to block Huggy from getting out. Well, you'll see. So the catwalk is kind of shiny and like glowing where you need to grab it. That way it's a little bit more obvious. Like how they have some things like the peel awayables in chapter 4 and 5. They glow so that you know what you're supposed to do. So you peel up the catwalk, and once you peel it up enough, it'll initiate that little cutscene, and Huggy will come like flying out of the vent, and he'll smack his head straight on the peeled up part of the catwalk, and he'll go tumbling into the void below. Basically the same way you take him out in the base game, but here I just thought it'd be a little bit more interactive. So you take out Huggy, and he tumbles into the darkness, and you can carry on through the catwalks and make your way over to the big poppy on the wall. But as you get closer, you'll notice that there's one of those, like, I think it's like a doorway. There's like a little doorway thing that is right above the poppy, and you'll see a very familiar prototype hand kind of grasping out onto the side of the wall from that doorway. And you'll also see a glowing eye staring at you from the darkness. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't move. He's just watching you. So the prototype is here. He's at this part of the facility. He is watching you. I just wanted to give some presence to the prototype. In the base game, he has that one VHS tape, and nobody knew what it meant. Here, it kind of sets up a creepier thing of like, okay, I'm being stalked by whatever the heck this thing is. I wanted to give him a slightly increased presence in this chapter. Not by much, but he's actually here and he's watching us. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't leave, he doesn't attack, he's just stalking us. So you can go up to the poppy, you open it up with one of the keys that you have on your little key ring, you go inside, and you find that the setting is very similar to the base game. It's that kind of home feel setting. It's a little bit more warmer, more inviting. It feels like home. So you walk through here, you go down the set of stairs, you enter the playroom, and just like in the base game, there's the door that's going to be the start to chapter 2, but instead of it being blocked by something, it's just locked here. So you try it, it doesn't open, it's locked. So you can move on and head over to Poppy's room. However, there's one more thing that you can find here. On the floor, right in front of the doors to Poppy's room, is a note, and you can pick it up, and it's an experiment log from Dr. Whitman to Elliot Ludwig. And it talks about how experiment 1006 is showing promising signs and that they are as close as ever to getting Poppy right. Obviously, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's the kind of general gist of the letter. It's explaining the prototype and that it is a prototype for Poppy, to kind of explain away some more stuff there. A little bit more story, a little bit more hints, and shows that Dr. Whitman knows a little bit more about what's going on here than other people might themselves. So you find the little note, and it's obvious, so that there's storytelling that you can find, but it's obvious because it's like right in the middle of your path. So that's why I wanted that there. But basically, you find it, you read it, you can go into Poppy's room, you open up her case, and it's the exact same thing. You open it up, and she's like, "Whoa, you opened my case!" And then the game ends. So the exact same ending, but there's some differences amongst the rest of the game, and I'll talk about that here in the outro. But that's it for the game itself. All of chapter 1 here, slightly rewritten with some additions added onto it. So the chapter starts in pretty much the exact same way, with us having just opened Poppy's case. However, the differences start immediately because she's standing right next to her case. We don't have to go find her, she's standing right next to her case. And she'll thank us for opening her case and rescuing her, and she'll lead us over to the door that kind of leads into the hallways to Elliot's office and all that, and she'll lead us in there. She has a key for it. She'll give it to us so we can unlock the door. We go in there, and she'll lead us down these hallways to, I'm thinking, the left hallway that goes next to Elliot's office. And we'll go down there, and at the end of the hallway, there's a door that is closed, locked. We need to get power to it in order for it to open. But as we were walking down the hallway, Poppy would be talking to us about how she recognizes us as somebody who used to work here, and that she thinks we're here to help make things right and put an end to all the evil stuff going on here. She has the same goal, and she thinks that we can kind of help each other to accomplish that goal. So basically, I just wanted her to be a far more established character, especially right off the bat. I know that it kind of is throwing a lot of exposition out there and a lot of story stuff out there, but I wanted to give her the starting point for the overarching story for all the chapters. Now that it's like, hey, chapter 1 was a success, we made chapter 2, let's get things going and start an overarching story, and have Poppy be a little bit more of a character than her kind of showing up, being a little quirky, and then disappearing after getting taken by mommy, and then at the end of the chapter, she's like almost fully evil. I wanted to give her a little bit more of like a starting stronger point. So that was kind of my reasoning for having her be talking to us and giving some story exposition. So back with going on from here, the door is closed. We have to go down the other hallway to solve a little power puzzle. In the room there would be a vent that would lead to Elliot's office, which would contain all of the same stuff you can find in Elliot's office in the base game. The letter about the rats, the VHS tape, the golden trophy, all of that would still be there as sort of like a little secret area that you can find if you go through that vent. But you get the power working, you go back to the door, and you'll find that the room that you and Poppy are going inside of is kind of like a living room. And I should bring this up, I don't think I did yet, but this whole area would keep the same sort of home/house aesthetic that Poppy's room has. It would keep that whole same feel to connect the whole area as sort of a home for Poppy. And she would say that as you enter the room, she's in there, and she would bring up that she used to call this place home, and that she used to live here for a while until, and she'd trail off, hinting at the hour of joy without directly saying the hour of joy, to kind of, again, have a little bit more of a setup without directly mentioning something from later on. So we're in this room now, and it's a living room of sorts with like a fake fireplace, some tables and chairs and bookshelves that are all Poppy sized to also hint at the fact that, you know, she used to live here. And on one of the walls is a slide entrance, like just sort of the big circular entrance to a slide. And Poppy would walk over there and turn to us, telling us that this slide will take us down to the game station. And we need to go to the game station because there's a train there that will take us further into the facility. So we now have our chapter end goal of getting to the train and escaping from this place. But Poppy does warn us that there's something lurking in the game station. While most call her a monster, some call her Mommy. And right as she says that, Mommy Longlegs grabs her from inside the slide, drags her down, and we jump in after her. So again, it's a little exposition heavy, but I wanted to have her set up a little bit more of the chapter story instead of it being like, oh, we need to get the train code, and then Mommy Longlegs kind of tells us most of what we need to do for the chapter, of like the whole entire story for the chapter, and Poppy's just kind of there. I wanted to give Poppy more connection with the character, like the player, and have it be like she tells us the end goal because that's something that we both need to reach, and sets up why we would follow Mommy Longlegs' games. And obviously we'll get to that in a second when we confront her, but it sets up that we're working with Poppy rather than just kind of trying to leave, which I never understood why the player was just trying to leave even though we just got there. It sets up that we're going to go deeper into the facility with this train rather than leaving. So that was kind of my intention with that scene. But we jump down in the slide after Poppy, and that's when we'll have our confrontation scene with Mommy Longlegs. So we exit the slide into a ball pit at the bottom of said slide, and before we get to the Mommy Longlegs confrontation, this is to also set up that Poppy used to use the slide. Instead of old man Elliot Ludwig sliding down these huge crazy slides, Poppy would use this slide to get to the game station to hang out with the other kiddos when Elliot was still in charge. So just a little side note, but that's what the slide was used for. So we get to the ball pit, we look up, and we see Mommy Longlegs right there. The confrontation scene starts immediately because I never understood why we exit the slide and then we walk into like another room and then Mommy Longlegs shows up. I think having her here and us in a bit of a vulnerable position, having just fallen out of a slide into a ball pit and her towering over us, gives a little bit more sense of kind of maybe creepy or scary, but like that she's far more powerful than we are. So she's holding on to Poppy and she's towering over us. And she would be looking at us before turning back to Poppy and saying that Poppy shouldn't have left her case because her case is there to keep her safe from him, insinuating the prototype. Then Mommy would turn back to us. She wonders how we got this far, seeing as Huggy usually stops any guests that get here, and then she figures out that we probably killed Huggy and that's why we are here. She is curious as to why we took Poppy out of her case, until she puts it together that we're here to help Poppy and to help her get further into the facility. We need her to get further and she needs us to get further into the facility. So Mommy puts this together and realizes that she has a bit of a bargaining chip. We want Poppy back to get further into the facility, and so she can now manipulate us into doing whatever she wants. And she basically says as much and says that there's some games in the game station that haven't been used for a while and she would love to see them played again. If we go through and we play through these 3 games, then we'll win Poppy back. And if we fail these 3 games, then some toy is getting dinner. She'll then tell us to head into the game station while laughing and retreating into a vent in like the upper portion of the wall and not just fading out into like an infinite room above. So she'll leave with Poppy and we have to head into the game station. So my kind of goal / reasoning for this section was to set up Mommy Longlegs as a bit more of an intimidating villain rather than like, oh, she's scary. She's not necessarily scary. She's more like she's smarter. She's a little bit more intimidating and she's got more bargaining chips. And she controls all the toys in this area. Like, she's got a lot going for her. She has the deck stacked in her favor, and we're going up against somebody who basically controls this whole area. So I wanted to give her a bit more of like a stronger stance and presence rather than her kind of just showing up and being like, oh, it's so great to see somebody that can play the games again. Go play the games for the train code. I wanted to set her up to be a little bit more like, hey, she actually kind of knows what she's doing and she's more intimidating. So that was kind of my reasoning for this confrontation scene being a little bit different. And I wanted to hint at her not necessarily liking the prototype. I will talk more about this later on, but Mommy Longlegs and the prototype don't get along, and in fact, they are actually basically at war with each other. So again, I'll talk more about that later as it'll become more relevant later. But right now, we're heading into the game station to play the 3 maybe fun games. So a lot of the game station and the mini games and areas surrounding them are very similar, just with a lot of the filler trimmed out of them. So I'm going to kind of rush through this section rather than super focusing on all the details. We're going to kind of just go through this because there's really not a bunch to talk about here. So the game station itself is basically identical to the base game, and even so much so that you have that like observation room above the whole facility. And up there, the only really big change I'm making to this area is that you can see Mommy Longlegs staring at you from said observation room to give her a more like watching presence rather than just like, hey, sometimes there's literally nobody around you. Like, she's always watching. There's somebody always watching you. No matter where you are in the facility, you're never alone. To kind of give this more unease feel rather than just like, hey, sometimes I'm being chased and other times there's nothing happening. So the game station itself is that. But basically, the same thing happens. You go up, you start the first game, you go to musical memory, and the changes start again because you might notice I never mentioned the red hand getting taken away from us, and that's because we never lose the red hand. We keep it. I have perfectly good intentions with this that will carry over into future chapters, but we never lose the red hand, mainly because I don't see a reason to lose it other than just getting a new hand, which I think we can just do anyway. So the green hand production room will still be here, we'll still get the green hand, it just comes after musical memory. And speaking of musical memory, this is the minigame that has seen the most changes. A lot of the like surrounding stuff will stay the same. Mommy Longlegs will observe and explain how the game works, but how this game works is it's more of like, I can't really describe it perfectly, but if you can picture that one Fall Guys game where you have to like, a picture of the fruit will show up on the screen and you have to stand on the right fruit tile, otherwise if you don't you'll fall into like the goo or whatever. I've never played Fall Guys, but I can picture that one game. It's kind of like that. Basically, a bunch of music will be playing, and eventually a color will be picked on a screen, and let's say it's like blue. So blue gets picked, and you have to run on a bunch of tiles on the floor, and go stand on a blue tile, and if you don't, then Bunzo will jump over and kill you. So it's a lot different from base game musical memory, mainly because I cannot stand those pattern recognition games. I'm like good at them, but the Security Breach Freddy upgrade station thing has just absolutely destroyed any interest I have in any of those kind of games. So I wanted to switch it up a little bit to be maybe a little bit more interesting and have Bunzo be more free moving rather than stuck to being lifted up and down by a string. So that was kind of my intention, but on the whole, it doesn't really matter whether musical memory stays this way or not. I think it doesn't really change much. It's just more moving around rather than clicking on things. So that's my musical memory. If you win, the game will break, and Mommy will be disappointed that the game broke, but she'll give us a win and say that we can leave. So you turn to leave, but Bunzo isn't done with us yet because he wanted his dinner, he wanted his food, and he'll follow us. The floor bridge thing beneath us will break, and we'll fall and tumble through the floor and into the green hand production room. Now, this is where I want to add a little bit more realism into the game, because oftentimes, in especially Poppy Playtime, our character will fall from tremendous heights and we'll be like, fine. We fell down a cave in Chapter 4, and we got up fine. We were like, A-okay. I want to give a little bit more realism, so we fall through the floor, we wake back up, and we're slow. Our run is very slow, it doesn't last very long, and our movement is very slow. But Bunzo was also injured, turning into Shattered Bunzo, I don't know what else you'd call him, and I'm picturing like that one comic picture of Bunzo where he's like super beat up. So Bunzo here will be blind. It's one of those like blind but they can hear you sections, and he'll roam around crashing his cymbals sometimes if he hears noise, and basically all you have to do is avoid Bunzo while producing the green hand in the exact same way, and there will be a door that you need to leave out of that will have all of your green hand instructions there just for you. So you'll go up to it and it'll have where you collect the power, where you output the power, and then the door would open, and there'd be a little poster explaining how that works. So you get your green hand, everything there is the exact same except for Bunzo being here. You leave the room, you go through the door, and it's a set of stairs that bring you back up to the game station. So you get back out to the game station, and you're free to do your next game, which is Whack-A-Wuggy, but I renamed it to Statues, and you'll kind of see why in a second. So I renamed Whack-A-Wuggy to Statues because I wanted to have the idea that these games didn't need to use the grab pack when the kids were playing them, mainly because I know Playtime Co. is evil, but I think it would be kind of stupid if they risked the kids' lives, their test subjects' lives, by having them use grab packs when they're just kids and they don't really know how to use them. So each of the games would be able to be played without the grab pack. Obviously, when we're here, we need it, but when the kids were playing them, they didn't need it. So in this game, the kids would just observe the Huggies and then they get pulled away when they get observed. Here, the Huggies don't have the strings, so we have to whack the Huggies with the grab pack. It's all the same. Mommy describes it the same. It's all just that. So we get through this section. I felt like I didn't really need to change it because it was kind of fun. And once you get through this, the door to leave is broken, so you have to crawl through a vent. And that brings us out to the bury the cart section, where you have to like drag bury the cart through all the different rooms and open the doors. And Kissy Missy shows up to open the door for us. Everything here is, again, the exact same, but instead of it being kind of just like a smooth sailing area where there's nothing going on, the little Wuggies show back up, and they show up through like cracks in the walls and like vents in the ceiling and stuff like that. And we have to knock away the little Wuggies as we go through each section. So we drag bury the cart through each area while fending off the little Wuggies that are still trying to take us down. I just wanted to give this area, again, a feel that we are never alone. There's never a moment where there's nothing happening. There's just constantly stuff like hunting us down and chasing us and trying to kill us, or even just observing us, so that it's giving this constant feel of unease that we're never alone. So that's why the Wuggies are here, and to give this section something else to do. So you complete this area, bury the cart goes careening into the void, and you crawl through a vent in the now opened area that will bring you to the toy rejection room. And you get there, and everything here is pretty much the exact same again. However, you'll be trying to unlock a door rather than going up a platform or something like that. You're trying to unlock a door by doing a set of puzzles. Doesn't really matter what the puzzles are. But in this area, we'll find our good friend Braun, who's back from chapter 1, and he's here now. It's the same Braun, and his head spins 360 degrees as we work in this area. He doesn't do anything, he doesn't go around, but he's just here watching us. Braun somehow got here, and he's watching us as we solve our puzzle. So again, nothing really happens here, but just kind of another fun Braun inclusion. So you complete this area, you go back up the stairs, and you're back in the game station once again, ready to do your next game, which is Lights Out. So Lights Out is just statues with a new name, like Whack-A-Wuggy with a new name. And basically, it's the exact same. You go to the room, Mommy Longlegs appears, she's like, yo, 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 this is it, this is the last game. And PJ Pugapillar shows up and he doesn't say anything. And you just do the exact same thing. You move when the lights are off, you don't move when the lights are on, and you have to avoid PJ Pugapillar. But since this is the last game, Mommy Longlegs is trying to pull every card she has out of her sleeve in order to ensure we lose. So she invited a friend to join PJ Pugapillar, and it's none other than Cassie Cat-A-Pillar. Now, for those who don't know, Cassie Cutie Pillar was the original version of PJ Pugapillar until they replaced her, and I thought it would be fun to bring her character back in spirit, but changing her to fit in more with the Swapimals line. So she is a cat. And I think it'd be kind of a fun play on words. You have PJ Pugapillar and Cassie Cat-A-Pillar. That way they're both kind of like the animal swaps with the caterpillars. I just think it'd be kind of fun to include her as a secondary character. And how this game would work, we go further into the playground set area, being chased by PJ, and Cassie is coming from the other way. And we don't know that at first because Mommy Longlegs doesn't say anything. For people who aren't paying attention, they might run into her, die, bit of a jump scare if you're not paying attention, but if you are paying attention, you'll see her and notice that your way out is kind of in the middle of the map, so they almost pincer you in the middle of the map. You swing out in the exact same way, breaking through the glass and making it into the observation room, escaping PJ and Cassie Caterpillar. So we make it into the back halls and are escaping from that area, and we can hear Mommy Longlegs drop the act of being, kind of playful and being more straight to the point about how she's just gonna kill us. Like, just right away, she's like, you need to die because I need to remind him about who he is dealing with, and he's been showing up here now ever since we got here, so she needs to kill us to remind him, the prototype, about what he's dealing with and that she rules these parts. So she kind of blabs on and on until we, get out of earshot from her, and we find ourselves in an area called rehabilitation. And there's a bunch of rooms here that would be used to rehabilitate the toys back into doing their jobs, and kind of picture as a slightly more humane, kind of like the brainwashing rooms from chapter 5, kind of like that, but slightly more humane. There's no tying toys down the tables and stuff. It's a little more humane than that. And in this area, in the different rooms, you could find dead bodies of toys that are lying around there, one of which being a Bigger Body's Daddy Longlegs. You guys wanted me to include him. He's here, he's dead. But you can find his body, and you can also find a VHS tape of Eddie Ritterman talking to my character, Dr. Whitman. For those who don't know, Dr. Whitman is sort of like a new character here. Well, he is a new character here, created by me, and he's kind of like a mix of other characters, kind of put into one. And he runs this rehabilitation center, and we learn about that here through the tape. Eddie is talking to him and saying that both Eddie and the doctor, referring to Dr. Sawyer, just not by name, aren't happy with how Dr. Whitman here is running this area and being a little bit more kind to the toys. Not kind, but more humane to the toys. And that they think it's just a waste of time and resources. And Dr. Whitman would kind of push back, saying that while they are experiments, they are still living, breathing things and should be treated as such. So we just get a little bit more into Dr. Whitman's character, just a little bit. He ran this rehabilitation area, and while he still treats them as experiments, he does treat them kind of slightly nicer. So it's just kind of to build up his character a little bit more. But we work our way through this area. There'd be like a puzzle or two to solve. We get ourselves onto an elevator platform that brings us up like a tunnel area, like the Bunzo toy section. We go up kind of that elevator. We'd find the evidence of Huggy surviving, but we get to the top and we get off, and that's when Mommy Longlegs shows up. And she shows up from where the elevator is, climbing up the elevator, and like instantly just starts yelling at us about how, again, we shouldn't have crossed her and that she needs to do something because he's never come up this far before, and she needs to show him that she's serious. So there's no game of hide and seek here. There's no doing a little puzzle and then Mommy shows up and then she leaves and we're completely safe again. It's just a full chase sequence from here to the end, but interspersed within this chase sequence would be timed puzzles where you have to finish a puzzle to get through to a section while Mommy is still hunting us down. Kind of think of it like the blue hand scanner at the end of her chase, where she's running down the hallway and we have to use the blue hand scanner to get through. Something like that, where it's not just a blue hand scanner, but we have to like grab a gear and put it into a little gear machine to get a door to open. But while we're doing that, Mommy Longlegs is getting closer. So there would be a few puzzles interspersed throughout this area while she's chasing us, but it's all part of the big final chase sequence. So we get through it all, and eventually we wind up in a storage room that has a big, like, garage door kind of a thing with a lever next to it. And we go to use said lever to open the door, and as we're opening the door, it gets a couple inches off the ground before it jams. The lever doesn't move anymore, and the door doesn't go up anymore. The door is jammed, we're stuck, and Mommy Longlegs is getting closer. That's when a metal hand reaches under the door and lifts it up just enough for us to crawl through. It's the prototype's hand, and he's helping us. He opens up the door and actually helps us get through. I'll explain why in a second, because it's more relevant a little bit later, but the prototype opens the door for us to crawl through. We go through. Obviously, he's not there anymore. He escaped, and we see how he escaped. This hallway that we're now in is basically a catwalk above a bunch of industrial grinders below us, and along each of the walls are these huge tube kind of a things that look like the same thing Barry the cart went careening down earlier, kind of like that. Barry's not dead though, he's alive, but they're kind of that size, so the prototype can fit in them, and these would be used to dump toy scraps and other, materials like that to be grinded up and potentially using those, remaining scraps to be recycled into something else. So that's what this area is. It gives at least some more excuse to have a grinder here rather than just like, hey, here's a storage closet with a big thing of meat grinder in it. It's like, hey, this whole area is dedicated to grinding up trash materials. So we run down this catwalk, Mommy Longlegs is right behind us, we're running through, and we get to a part where the catwalk below us is broken out, and we have to swing across the gap. So we swing across, we turn around because Mommy Longlegs is still behind us, and she goes to swing, and I'm not sure if it would be like a quick time event we would have to do, or if it would just be something that happens. But as she swings across the little swingy grabby thing, it kind of jolts loose a little bit, and her foot gets caught in the grinder below. And she starts to get, crushed by the grinder. She dies the same way. She's screaming out. She's like, no, look what you've done. You're going to make me part of him. No. And she dies. And she also dies the same way, with her right arm, upper torso, and head being all that is left. She dies, and she's like, blah, I died. And then the prototype's arms emerge from one of those tunnels on the side of the wall, and both of his hands reach out and grab Mommy Longlegs before dragging her into the dark. So this whole section was kind of designed to give a little bit more context to the grinder, being there rather than it just, again, being a meat grinder in a room. And it was to set up the prototype of being more manipulative than he is like pure evil or pure kind. Like, he helps us out, but not because he's doing it out of the kindness of his heart. He's helping us because he wanted Mommy Longlegs dead, and because we can still, serve his purpose. There's still use for us. Like, he still has use for us. So he's helping us because he doesn't want us to die, because we can still be helpful to him. So he's not like super kind and being super helpful because he's nice. He's just using us to get his agenda done more. So that's why he's here. That's why he helped open the door, so that we could kill Mommy Longlegs. That's basically the whole thing. So we continue on down the catwalk. We get to a door at the end of the hall. It leads to a set of stairs that we go up, and there would be the VHS tape there about the prototype and the laser pointer and the room, and he killed the guy and whatever. But the only difference here is this whole thing would be narrated by Dr. Whitman instead of, whoever does it in the original. It's just to give Dr. Whitman, again, some more character stuff, and to hint that his ever-increasing connection to the prototype. So you can watch the VHS tape, you exit out through another door, and that brings you to the catwalks above the game station. You can go to the observation room, free Poppy, and she's actually like thankful. She's like, oh, thank goodness you freed me again. Now I'm like double in your debt. And she tells us to meet her down at the train platform because she has a friend down there that can help us out. So she leaves through a vent, and we leave and go down, guess what, another set of stairs that bring us to the train platform. So we get to the train platform, and the door to the train opens, and it's Kissy Missy that opens the door for us. And she lets us on, and she starts controlling the train and driving it out of the little station area. So I'm having Kissy Missy do this because she's the train conductor, like her cardboard cutout shows that. And I thought it'd be fun to have her be here at the end to set her up more for Chapter 3, and that she controls the trains because that was her job. She actually drove the trains when Playtime was doing their thing, like how Huggy's security. Kissy was the train operator, or at least one of the train operators. So I thought that would just be fun to have her be here and to do that. So Poppy kind of introduces us to Kissy, and then she starts talking about our continuing future plan. She tells us that we're going to be heading to Playcare because from there we can get deeper into the facility and reach a safe haven of sorts, where there's going to be some friends and allies that can help us out to continue on our mission. But she does warn us that Playcare isn't a safe place. It's dangerous, and it's being controlled by, and she gets cut off by a guy laughing over the loudspeakers of the train before the train speeds up and crashes. The train crashes, we fade out and like pass out, then we wake back up and we hear footsteps getting closer to the train, loud thumping footsteps, before we pass out again. And so this is supposed to be a lot of setup for the future chapter. Obviously, I mentioned Safe Haven, which is more of a general term than it is a name at this point, and I mentioned there being friends and allies there, which hints at characters like Doey without directly, again, naming or showing him, just to sort of have them actually be set up and not just showing up out of nowhere. And we also get her, getting cut off. She was going to say controlled by Catnap, but she gets cut off by the Doctor, who isn't named here, but it is him because apparently he crashes the train, like that's what everybody's saying. So he crashes the train, and this alludes to him by having a guy go ha 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 or something stupid like that, and he crashes the train. So it sets up the Doctor for future chapters, and the footsteps we hear at the end of the train crash when we fade back out into the dark are Catnap's footsteps, but obviously we don't know who Catnap is, so we hear these footsteps getting closer. It's Catnap, we just don't know that because he didn't exist yet. So that's my whole, story here. That's the end. The game ends right there. We fade out. Next stop is Playcare. And so I just wanted to have this whole ending kind of be like a big setup for the next chapter. So for this recap section, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I kept trying to figure out how I wanted to write this, and I just couldn't figure out a good way to put this down in the script form. So we're going completely off the script here. There's nothing to read. I'm going to just be basically yapping my mouth off about Project Playtime. So I kind of want to cover a few different bases with the game, mostly how they managed to make it worse with each subsequent update, but kind of just talk about the game on a whole. So the general story is that we are like an extraction specialist team from Playtime Company going back in to, I guess, make toys still, even though the place is overrun by a bunch of giant monster toys. So we're still going back in to make toys, and we have to solve big puzzle towers that are just randomly placed around the location. And then they give us the toy parts that we use to make the toys. And then there's like a monster that chases us around every now and then. And like that's really about it. Early Project Playtime, I actually really enjoyed. I had a ton of fun with it. And the main thing I really liked about the early one was the fact that when you die, you go into the little Huggy pit and you have to survive all the little Wuggies until you get brought out by one of your teammates. And then they decided to just remove that for some stupid reason. And I never really liked the game after that because that was my favorite part. But I don't know how they did it. They managed to make the game worse. I felt like it kind of ran worse. The animations were worse. The gameplay was worse. I don't know how they did it. But on the whole, the game was essentially just you're going to make toys for some reason, even though the factory is shut down. And then when you do complete all the toys, you escape on a train and you call it a day. I think, honestly, the story for this game is kind of a little weird. I don't know why we're going back, even though the place is shut down. I don't know. I think it's just kind of weird. And on the whole, for me, Project Playtime has always been a game that I found to be enjoyable at times, but it just doesn't quite feel right. Like, there's just something off about the game, and I really think it comes down to the gameplay being very nothing. You're either solving little puzzle towers or you're running away. Like, there's really nothing else going on. So that's going to be one of my ultimate goals, is to build a more enjoyable experience and a more unique and different experience within Project Playtime, rather than it being like 4 maps and all of them are pretty much like play the exact same. So that's kind of my ultimate goal, and that's really about it for this kind of wacky random off the script recap section. So now we'll get into the main rewrite, and I want to start it off by talking about my new updated story that I think works maybe a little bit better. It might also not, but in my mind, I think at least it's a little bit more interesting. So for this rewritten story section for Project Playtime here, instead of it being just talking about the very bare bones basic story that I have for the game itself, I thought it would also be fair to share some of my kind of backstory and different lore elements of my rewritten series with you guys, so you kind of get a better understanding about some of the concepts I'm going for, particularly in this game, but also will be carried over in some of the future chapter rewrites. So I want to share some kind of background information and lore that I don't really know where else to share specifically, so I'm sharing it here. So basically, the Hour of Joy is a very big part of the story that I'm setting up for this Project Playtime rewrite. And my Hour of Joy is very similar to the base game. The toys, unite, they work together to uprise, basically kill everybody, and then take over the factory for themselves. There are a couple differences here, though, that I think will build up more in future chapters, but are also very, characterizing, I guess is a good way to put it. And that is Poppy's connection to the prototype within the Hour of Joy. So Poppy, who doesn't show up in Project Playtime at all, she worked with the prototype to help lead the toys into the Hour of Joy uprising, which is kind of what happens in the base game. But the key difference here is that Poppy knew that people were going to die, that they were going to uprise and kill a bunch of people. She knew that and was willing to have these people sacrificed in order for them to achieve their goal. However, she didn't realize it was going to be everybody. She thought it was going to be the people down in the labs who are the super evil people, and not the guy at the loading dock who's just emptying a truck of random stuff. So she didn't realize it was going to be everybody. The prototype planned on killing everybody. So that's kind of where their split starts, is that Poppy realizes the prototype really doesn't care about regular people and wants to just achieve his goals. And Poppy, even though she's willing to sacrifice people, at least does still have a heart and wants to help save people in some way, shape, or form. So there's a little bit of a Poppy in her involvement in the Hour of Joy, and some other, important lore here as well, is that after my Hour of Joy, things kind of fall apart within the toy faction quite fast, because some of the more powerful and more influential toys, Mommy Longlegs, Catnap, the Doctor, who is not really a toy, but he's pretty influential, Doughy, these people, they all kind of split apart a couple weeks to a couple months after the Hour of Joy. They all split up into their own different factions, who basically they all hate each other. Mommy Longlegs takes control of the game station and the upper levels. I talked about that briefly within my Chapter 2 rewrite, but she controls that area and is very much at odds, basically at war with the prototype, and in turn, Catnap, who controls Playcare and is still under the control of the prototype. And then the Doctor just controls the prison level because he's the Doctor. So my idea is that factionalism takes place within the toy group, and they all kind of split into their own different regions, which will play a part in the different map locations within this video, hence why I'm talking about it. So that's kind of the backstory, and with all of that aside, the actual story for this Project Playtime rewrite is that we would be playing as survivors of the Hour of Joy a few days to maybe a week or two after the event. So all the toys are still united, but there are different regions that they control, and we are kept alive by the toys to be used as basically toys within their own gladiator-like games. So we and a bunch of other people are kept alive and thrown out into different locations within the factory to try and survive fighting against the different monsters, which includes Huggy, Mommy Longlegs, Boxy Boo. We're kind of thrown out here in order to try to see if we can survive, as a bit of a game for these toys to witness and for them to play with us now, rather than with the scientists and the workers playing, with the monsters. You get what I'm saying. So that's kind of the ultimate story that I have set in here. We're not going back to make toys for some reason. We're survivors being used in gladiator-like games. Now, that doesn't fully explain away the fact that we can play basically an infinite amount of these games, but on the whole, that's the story. So with the story out of the way, I briefly was talking about it, but I kept bringing up the different locations and faction settings, and that's what I want to talk about next, are the locations and the maps. So when I was working on coming up with the ideas for this rewrite, the maps and locations for Project Playtime were a big thing that I wanted to upgrade and sort of expand upon, because the base game does have a few kind of cool maps, but they feel kind of scattered and sporadic without any real connections or hey, it's all part of the same facility. They kind of just feel thrown about. And for me, I wanted to add new maps that would feel a little bit more distinctive and help lead into potentially future chapters, and also update the actual map selection system, because in the base game you just go in and you just pick whichever one you want to do. You wait for your lobby to fill up, and then it's like, hey champ, here's one of our 2 maps that you can pick from, or you can pick random and call it a day, and like you don't know which map you're gonna get, and it's kind of just like completely random. I wanted to update how you choose a map and the actual maps themselves to kind of make them more interconnected, at least with some other maps. So I have a total of 7 maps here and 3 individual locations you can choose from. Now, I'll talk about what I mean by choosing said location, because that is the new selection system for your maps. 2 locations have 3 maps, and then the last one we'll talk about later because it's kind of its own deal. But essentially, you can pick one of 2 main locations to choose from, and each of those locations have 3 maps that you can, pick. But what'll happen is, instead of it being like you just select your character and then you wait for some random thing to happen, it'll almost be like Battlefront 2's Galactic Supremacy, where you select which mode you want to pick, and then you wait for a lobby to fill up, or I guess in that case you join a lobby, but here you would wait for a lobby to fill up, then go into the random map selection mode, where it'll pick a map from that location for you, and then you get thrown into the game. So to get into those maps themselves, so that you can kind of get a better picture about what I'm talking about, like I mentioned, there are 3 total locations, 2 of which are the ones that actually have this random map selector thing that you can do. And those locations are the Upper Factory, the Below, and Playcare. So we'll start with the Upper Factory, and this stuff kind of has to do with the factionalism I mentioned when talking about the story. And that is because these areas are specifically chosen to line up with my vision of how the toys and different influential mascots and monsters took over different areas of the factory. So the Upper Factory is Mommy Longlegs' domain. So that's like the chapters 1 and 2 areas, the more public side of the factory. Mommy Longlegs took over that, and that is her domain, so that is the Upper Factory. And the 3 maps for the Upper Factory are the theater, the game station, and the production wing. Now, the theater is just basically the theater from the base game, which I also had in my version of Chapter 1. It's just the same map. Then you have the game station, and it is just the same map as Chapter 2's game station, just a little bit more clean and put together. And in this one, you'd also be able to openly explore the 3 little mini games that you play within there, and some different other areas of the game station to kind of open up the map a little bit more, so you're not stuck in that one open room. And then the last map is the production wing, and it's essentially just the Destroy a Toy map from base Project Playtime, but it's the production, it's the toy production area of things. So that would be the 3rd map. All of these are kind of like the more classic straightforward maps. They're not super complex, there's not a whole lot going on here. They're kind of just the regular Poppy Playtime maps. The Below is where things get a little bit more interesting. These areas take place within kind of the Chapter 4 locations, so we're going deep underground for this. There's going to be more caves, there's going to be more dark and less happy, public side of Playtime. This is the more we don't talk about this stuff. And the 3 maps I have selected for the Below are Deep Storage, the Pit, and the Caves. So deep storage is essentially just some of those storage rooms that we briefly see within the Mob Entertainment VHS videos, but they're just a bunch of interconnected mascot storage rooms and just regular supply storage rooms that are where the more dangerous toys are kept. And obviously I'll talk about those when I get to the monsters, but I almost imagine deep storage being kind of like Boxy Boo's map, because he's connected to the storage rooms. You get sent down to deep storage and Boxy Boo, takes care of you, that kind of a thing. So that's what deep storage essentially is. The Pit is kind of like the Misfit map, or whatever it's called from the base game, where you have this huge pit in the ground and a bunch of catwalks and stuff interconnecting into it. But it's also kind of like Utapau in Revenge of the Sith, where it's just a big pit in the rock and there's a bunch of stuff carved into it. Imagine that. So there's a bunch of rock and kind of caves around this area, similar to Chapter 4, and there's a big pit in the ground with different catwalks and stuff going across it, and also hallways and tunnels carved into the rock, so you can explore through all of this, go above the pit, go into the pit, and just kind of explore around and do all that kind of stuff, while also being chased by a monster. And last up is the caves. And this was initially going to be the mines and take inspiration from the mine section within Chapter 4. However, I didn't want to include too many connections to Chapter 4 itself, since obviously that chapter, didn't exist at this point. And even if they were already thinking about it, I didn't want to include it here because it was never shown prior. So I only stuck with caves. And essentially how this map would look is it's kind of like a lot of the elements we see within Chapter 4 within like the cave integration stuff, but kind of mixed with like Hoth Echo Base, where the hallways are more narrow and there's just doors carved into the wall. It's a much more claustrophobic map, which would still be big enough for the toys to walk through without them like clipping through the wall, but it's the more claustrophobic, tight corners, that kind of a map. And these would be to set up the feel for Chapter 4 whenever we get there. And last up, we have Playcare. Now, obviously, I'm not including any major elements from Playcare itself, like the dome or any of the specific locations within the Playcare area, because that would just be spoilers for Chapter 3. And this isn't like a case of like, oh, I can't include it because they didn't come up with it. This is a case of like Mob Entertainment wouldn't just spoil stuff for their next chapter this openly. So instead, this map that I have here called the Arena is essentially the starting location that we have for Chapter 3, where you have the trash compactors and a bunch of industrial stuff going on in the background. And that's what this map would essentially be. It would be carried over into Chapter 3 for the start of that chapter, so there's a little bit of a sneak peek for you guys. And that's essentially all this map really is. It's basically a teaser for Chapter 3, and it's just the opening location with some vents, industrial stuff going on, and some different trash compactors. There's more than one, there's a few around the area, and that's essentially all that this map really is. But this map is also special because of the specifically new monster attached to this location, and I'll talk about him next when we get to the monsters. So like I mentioned when I was talking about the locations in the maps, each of the monsters are kind of tied to a specific location within the factory. So like I brought up, Mommy Longlegs can only be used in the upper factory, Boxy Boo can only be used within the below, and then our character for the Playcare section can only be used there. And while that might seem a bit limiting in like the amount of monsters you can go up against and which characters you're fighting against and which maps that you can use them on, I wanted to at least kind of balance it out a little bit by including more monsters for you to pick from. So instead of there being like 3 monsters and you're stuck with 7 maps, there's a total of 7 main monsters and 2 actual secret ones that you can unlock if you do a certain amount of things within some of the maps. Obviously, I'll talk about those when I get to the secrets and Easter egg section, but there are a total of 9 total monsters. So technically there are 9 total monsters that you can play as within the game. So to kind of break them down like I did with the locations, the upper factory level, like I've mentioned before, contains Mommy Longlegs along with Huggy Wuggy and Cat Bee, a bigger bodies version of Cat Bee. I thought this one would be kind of fun to have here because Cat Bee kind of feels like one of those mascots that would kind of tie in better with the Mommy Longlegs area, like the game station and all of those places. So it kind of feels like their character would work better in those locations, and they're one of the mascots that I feel like a lot of people have wanted to at least see some version of a bigger bodies version of, so I thought it'd be fun to include them here. You'll also notice that with some of the other characters I bring up, a lot of them are ones that never got a bigger bodies version that I don't have any intention of including within the main chapters, so I thought it'd be fun to include them here so that they have at least some showing in some way, shape, or form. For the below, obviously, like I've mentioned, we have Boxy Boo, but we also have the addition of Daisy and of Boogie Bot. These might seem a bit more eclectic, like a bunch of random characters just thrown together, and that's kind of the point. The below is where Chapter 4 takes place, at least parts of it, and so it's a lot more of random toys, random characters, especially mascots that were maybe not utilized all that much or weren't really mainline mascots, they get thrown down here, hence why things seem a bit more eclectic within their toy selections. And I picked these two in particular, Daisy because she got cut from chapter 2, and I thought it'd be fun to include her here. People kept bringing her up, hey, you should include Daisy in something, and I thought she might make for a fun antagonist in the below, especially if she has distinctive gameplay tied to her. And Boogiebot was a bit more of a random one, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to see like what a bigger body's version of Boogiebot would look like, so that's kind of why he's here. Like, they're just kind of random selections for the like kind of trash pit of the Playtime factory. And last up for Play Care, we have a new character, because obviously I'm not going to include like Catnap if this comes out before chapter 3, because otherwise then he just gets spoiled. Like, oh, now I'm fighting Catnap, the guy who's going to be the main villain of the next chapter. Obviously I didn't want to include that, and I didn't want to use any of the bigger bodies smiling critters, because I also thought then Dog Day's reveal might seem a bit odd as well. So I wanted to not include any of the main smiling critters. I couldn't include Miss Delight because, again, she doesn't even like show up at all within any of these earlier chapters, so I couldn't include her here. And so I was kind of left with having to add in my own character, plus I wanted to add in another bigger bodies monster within chapter 3 anyway, so I went looking back through the chapter 2 concept art, and I found a character that I think could be really cool within specific settings, and that is a Jester Fox. He was originally, I'm saying he because that's the character I'm making, he was originally used, or was going to be concept art used for the Musical Memories game, but was cut and then replaced with Daisy, who was then cut and then replaced with Bunzo. But I thought a Jester Fox could be really cool. Some inspiration for the Jester, idea came from the like reveal images for the Mimic graphic novel, where there's a Jester costume that looks absolutely sick in some of those shots. So I thought a Jester would work really well here, and I did give him a name. His name is Fester, which is just a combination of Fox and Jester, but his name also does kind of mean that he's festering down within Play Care, and so I thought it was just kind of like a fun play on the name of like, it's just combining Jester and Fox, but it's also like he's festering down here in Play Care. So he's going to be the main antagonist of this Play Care level within my Project Playtime rewrite. And that's about it for our main monster lineup. Obviously, like I mentioned, there are 2 secret mascots that you can pick from, but again, I'm talking about those in the secrets and Easter egg section. So with all of the monsters and locations now out of the way, we can finally get into the main gameplay and objectives when you're actually playing this game. So the gameplay here would be fairly similar to the base game, with you having to go around and solve different puzzles in order to win the day. However, the major changes here are how these puzzles are implemented and the kind of goals of our players. So my biggest issue has always been those puzzle towers. They don't make any sense. So instead, I thought it'd be fun to have the puzzles be more tied to the environments and the maps around them. So for an example, the upper factory, you have the game station, and within the game station, I thought it would be fun to have one of the puzzles that you need to solve be musical memory. So it's specifically tied to the game station, but it's also a bit more of a different puzzle than just, oh, I'm pressing piano keys on a big tower in the middle of nowhere. I wanted puzzles that would be tied to their environment. So other maps like the production wing would have more industrial based ones of like conveyor belt moving or like pipe redirection or something like that, I don't know. But I would have the puzzles be more connected to the maps themselves to make them feel more distinctive. Now, people might go, well, it's the same puzzles every time. Yeah, it's the same puzzles every time with the towers anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think having the puzzles be tied to the environment kind of just, to me, makes it feel stronger. Now, obviously, the puzzles would still be obvious enough for players to know where they are, and I think that I would keep the same, like, hand scanning thing, like you have to have the hand on the hand scanner in order to play said puzzle. That way there is some connection about where the puzzles are and a way to actually keep you there doing the puzzle. But on the whole, having them be more integrated, I think, works a little bit better. Now, the ultimate goal of doing these puzzles is also different. In the base game, again, you just do those puzzles and then you get like a toy part that you send on a chute for some reason. Here, instead, you are collecting keys. So after each puzzle that you solve, you'll get a key. And after you collect, I'm thinking 6 of them, kind of like how the base game has the 6 toy parts. Here you would collect 6 keys that would help you and your teammates unlock a safe room that you can then escape to at the end of the round. So you collect all the keys, you go to the escape room, you hide in the escape room, and that will be how you finish up the game. Unless you all die, that's also a way for the game to end. Now, also do keep in mind that these safe rooms aren't like an actual way for the players to escape, because everything here is quote-unquote staged, because the leading monsters controlling said areas are all doing this for the sake of toying with us and turning us into a game. So like the upper factory, Mommy Longlegs, she isn't actually letting us leave. She has all these puzzles set up intentionally for us to solve to get to the escape room as a way for her to entertain herself, whether she is chasing us or whether she is just observing. So at the end of the day, all we are doing is essentially just a game for the other toys to watch. But one other major change here, the last major change I'm making to the gameplay, because I'm not going to talk about like the doors or the lockers because those are just like the same. But the last major change I wanted to make here does have to do with how to defend yourself against the toys, because I've always felt that there really isn't a good way to defend yourself against the toys. It's either like you just run away or you get lucky with a door closing, and like it's just all based on luck. But I never really felt like there was a good way to escape the toys in any fashion. So here I added a bit of a way for the players to be able to escape from the toys at least for a few seconds, and that is by adding in a swappable hand module that you would have within just the base game itself. Now, I'll also briefly talk about the grab pack idea I have here, because I mentioned swappable hands in my chapter 2 rewrite video, and everybody was like, well, actually we have the grab pack 1.0 and the 2.0 has the swappable hands. I don't care. Everything here is a grab pack. There's no 1.0 or 2.0 in my rewrites. It's just a freaking grab pack. So you could have a swappable hand here. It doesn't matter. But we get a swappable hand, and this one would be similar to the flare gun hand we get in chapter 3. However, instead of shooting out flares, we shoot out smoke grenades, or some sort of a smoke releasing device of some kind. And what this would do is that if you are escaping from a toy, like you're solving a puzzle, a toy shows up, you quickly swap to the smoke grenade, you shoot out the smoke grenade, and if the monster gets within the smoke radius, they will be temporarily blinded and slowed for like 5 seconds. I was gonna say 5 to 10, maybe that would be a perk you can unlock, but like 5 to 10 seconds the monsters would be slowed and blinded, giving you enough time to escape and run away before the monsters can get to you. Now, that does sound entirely overpowered, which is why I'm only allowing 3 rounds per game. So each time you play, like a map, you go into the map, you only get 3 smoke grenade rounds to use. Once those are out, you have no more to use for the rest of that game. Now, I would also add in a perk that you could maybe unlock by collecting enough of the in-game currency, whatever that would be. But you would be able to unlock a perk that gives you 2 more or something like that. But essentially, you just have 3 chances to escape from the monsters. Once you use those up, then you're kind of just stuck with running around and closing doors. And that is essentially it for the major gameplay changes. I know that it's really not that starkly different, but again, the goal of this was less major, huge like overhaul and more of a refinement of what already exists. So I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay, but we do have one more thing to talk about. And finally, to wrap things up, we'll talk about those secrets and Easter eggs that I've been constantly mentioning throughout the video. So the first major secret / Easter egg that you can find is one that shouldn't be too surprising to people who have seen the previous chapter 1 and chapter 2 rewrite videos. That is, of course, our good friend Braun. He makes an appearance here. Obviously, he kind of has to. He's been showing up in each of my rewrite videos now, so he's here again. And he has a chance to spawn in one of the maps within the upper factory location. And it would be a chance every time you play the map there's a chance that he would spawn in, and he'd be in some little corner of the map, kind of hidden away, but he would do his signature thing of staring at you. His head moves 360, but he doesn't move around, he just stares at you. So I just thought this would be kind of fun to include Braun here again, because it's Braun and I've been including him in all the chapters. And don't worry, I do have plans for Braun in the future besides him just staring at us at a 360-degree spinning head. As for the secret characters that I've mentioned, particularly within the monster section, there are two, like I said, and there's one for the upper factory, one for the below, not any for the play care section, but there is another secret that we will talk about. The first monster you can unlock is if you do a few different hidden super secret puzzles that are hard to find within each of the maps in the upper factory. Then there would be a few of these different puzzles within each map, so you have to play each map in order to solve all these puzzles. Once you get them all done, you unlock the secret character, who for the upper factory is Bunzo, because I thought it'd be kind of fun to have Bunzo show up. He's a little bit of a fan favorite, he's got those symbols, he's a rabbit, he's jumping around. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have him here, and while he's not like a mascot who didn't get a bigger bodies version, I still thought it would be fun to just have a character that we have seen before make a bit more of a fun appearance. So it's just Bunzo, he does his Bunzo thing, he's got his symbols, nothing really too spectacular here. For the below, it's the same deal. Each map would have a set of puzzles that you'd have to solve, and once you get them all done, you'd unlock your secret character, who would be Candy Cat, a bigger bodies version of Candy Cat. I don't really know what they do, but they do something all right. I don't really know, but I thought it'd be fun to include them here, especially because like I tried to include most of everybody else, and I feel like if I didn't include Candy Cat, they kind of just be left out. So they're here to make a bit of a fun appearance. And the last major secret or Easter egg that you can find is a secret within the Play Care map. It's a similar deal where you have to solve a set of puzzles, but once you solve these secret puzzles, you will be able to get a phone call from a character that will show up in chapter 3 and I guess chapter 4 as well, and is my replacement for Ollie, and that is a character named Vivian, who tells you that she is just a friendly toy that is here to help you. So I'm replacing Ollie. I'll obviously explain more of that within the chapter 3 rewrite video, but I thought this would be a fun little sneak peek for you guys to see what's to come in the chapter 3 rewrite alongside Fester, the Jester, Fox. I thought it'd be fun for you guys to get some little hints towards my ideas for chapter 3. So that's it for the secrets and the Easter eggs, and that's actually it for the whole video. So let's round off things here. So the chapter starts in pretty much the exact same way, with the same VHS tape with the Smiling Critters animation and the guy doing the news report. The only difference here is that I'm adding in a little part where he says that the whole Smiling Critters line has been removed from Playtime's advertising, marketing, all of their stores and stuff like that. So the Smiling Critters line has been canceled by Playtime, and that is a subtle explanation as to why they don't show up in chapters 1 or 2 as like toys being sold or advertising or stuff like that, because the whole line was canceled. So they got scrubbed from the Playtime lineup, which is why we don't see them in chapters 1 and 2. So just a subtle little thing there. But the rest of the opening VHS is the same, and then boom, title card. So moving into the start of the chapter itself, we get a cutscene that shows us getting dragged away from the train crash, where we can see Kissy holding on to Poppy, both of them hiding in the debris as we get taken away. So I wanted to have a stronger connection with the end of chapter 2, so that there is a little bit more of a segue, like, hey, right, we're at the train, we get a shot of us getting taken away from the train, and then that leads us into the shot where Catnap drags us over the trash chute and drops us in. So moving on from that point, we tumble to the ground after falling through the trash chute and find ourselves in an old trash compactor room, specifically the map from my Project Playtime rewrite, the Arena. So you can look around and you'll see toy parts from Little Wuggies or other toys from chapters 1 and 2, and toy parts from the Little Critters. So there's a lot of toys that fight within this arena. You can also look up and see a bit of like a cage mesh kind of a thing going over top of the room, and a ton of the little critters are all scampering and clambering around up there. At some point, Catnap will show up, and he'll kind of pull a lever like Kronk, and open up a door, releasing a ton of the little critters into the room, in which we will need to fend them off. How you do so is using the grab pack hand to sort of like smack each of the little critters in the face, and then they'll scurry off, because we don't have the flare gun hand yet, obviously. So you just hit them with your regular grab pack hands and they'll scamper off. And this would be a timed section, so after like a minute or two of defending yourself, there'll be a scripted little critter that will jump up on the wall, scamper away. He'll knock open a vent covering, in which you can swing and climb up through and escape the arena. So I wanted to give the chapter a much more active start, which it kind of does have with you having to escape the trash compactor, but I thought it would be cool to show Catnap off in a bit more of like a commanding way. Like, he runs this joint. Just like how Mommy Longlegs shows up and she's like, I'm in charge of this place, they all listen to me. Catnap shows that like he's in charge of this place, and things are a little more like feudal. They have like gladiator-like games. So I just thought it would be a bit more of an interesting start to the chapter. But anyway, we escape through the vents and move into sort of the back industrial areas of the location. So this area will be pretty close to what the base game has, where you get through like all the random pistons and stuff, and then you end up in the like offices areas where you get some of the VHS tapes and stuff like that, and you'll get the phone call from Ollie, except here it's not Ollie. I replaced Ollie with a new character who I brought up briefly in the Project Playtime rewrite video, and this new character is Vivian, but she basically fills the exact same role. She is the prototype. I mean, the character wise not, but the Vivian persona is the prototype, lying to us, guiding us through. It's the same sort of a thing, except instead of Ollie being like the prototype's actual personality, it's just a personality of somebody that he killed. Specifically of a toy that he killed. And she will tell us what toy she is. She'll explain that she's here to help us, that she is a toy, and that she is a Fester the Jester Fox toy, specifically a bigger bodies version of him. And she's the good one, not the bad one, which hints that Fester himself might show up at some point here. But I thought it would be fun to explain away the prototype's Jester design in some aspects by having him have killed Vivian at some point between the Hour of Joy and now, and incorporating her design into his, his own design. So he made her design part of him. I just thought it'd be a fun way to not have two different Jester characters. So it does hint that my prototype will be a bit different from the base game. Anyway, she moves on and she tells us that obviously she doesn't explain that she's the prototype, but she helps us through the different areas, opening doors for us, leading us to where we need to go, which will eventually bring us out to the train tracks that the train had crashed on. We continue down and eventually we get to the train station that leads us into Playcare. Now, I might have brought this up in a previous video, but my Playcare is different from the base game. It's on the same level as the game station, so there's no going deeper to get the Playcare, which means that there's no caves, no gondola system that you can take to get the Playcare. So the train station that we enter into, we would just walk through and end up within the Playcare dome, which would just be a construct like the game station. So that's where we enter into after making our way through the station. So once we get inside Playcare, Vivian will tell us that we need to get to the system control room. There should be an obvious door, we just need to find the flower, and that is a hint to the letter that we get at the start of chapter 1, which hints that Vivian knows a bit more about what's going on here, that she probably is the prototype, and that in my version, specifically my version, the prototype was the one to send us the letter. I don't care about the base game story. In my version, the prototype sent us the letter. So that's my story here. Heading into that room, everything in there is like the exact same. The layout, the puzzles that you have to do, you get the purple hand, you jump around, you do all that kind of stuff. Everything there is the exact same because I don't care enough to change that part. So all of that's just the same. After we do all those puzzles and we kind of get that area running again, Vivian will tell us that we need to get enough power to get the whole place running again, which is why we need to go to the different locations to activate the generators, basically just like the base game. She'll bring us back out to the dome, and a slight change here as well. The power sockets are going to be along the outside of the statue, probably behind panels that you'll have to peel away. Instead of having to go underground, you just attach the power cord to a power socket along the outside of the statue section. It probably just saves on travel time. Anyway, Vivian will tell us that our first location that we're going to is going to be Home Sweet Home. Entering Home Sweet Home, you'll head down the starting hallway and reach a set of double doors. Yes, I added one. And when you go to open them, instead of entering a room just already filled with the red gas, and then you start tripping out, instead, Catnap is right on the other side of the doors, literally like face right there. And the second the doors open, boom, he hits you with the red gas, and you start tripping out. Eventually, you regain your vision, though it will be red and hazy, and you'll still see Catnap right on the other side of the doors. Now, whether you try to interact with him with the grab pack hands, or you just walk into him, you'll find out that he's made of red gas. He'll just turn into a puff of smoke. This is a super huge pull till the end of the game where the fake Catnap system comes up again. Just a super crazy pull that probably nobody will remember by the end of the game. But you continue into the room, you head down the stairs, all just like the base game. The rest of this part is also pretty close to the base game as well because I actually like it. The only difference with this sort of hallway maze is that there will be scripted encounters like the base game, but also random encounters where there's a chance that he might show up at a spot to, be spooky and creep you out, but there's also a chance that he won't, just to add some randomness to the game. The only other major difference here is that the radio, instead of giving you a story about Elliot Ludwig and a body being found and all that kind of stuff, is sort of like a Candy Cadet story where you get told a tale about a man who made a sacrifice of his one child to save another. But aside from that, there's not really anything else that's majorly changed. You get to the end, creepy nightmare Huggy shows up, he chases you down the hall, and when he jump scares you, he actually turns into a puff of smoke that leads into us passing out again, waking back up in the main room without the red gas there, and we continue on like the base game. So just like most of the previous sections, Home Sweet Home here is actually pretty dang similar, if not just the same. I like it, it's pretty fine. Most of the stuff here is going to stay the same. The only major changes are that there will be random Catnap sightings, just like in the hallways. And the only other kind of major thing is a little bit of lore / a secret within Kissy Missy's room, and that is a report that you can find from Dr. Whitman talking about Kissy's rehabilitation, and that he says that she's been improving with the new treatment, which is her hanging out in the game station with the other kiddos. She also is hanging out with Poppy, who likes to hang out there as well, and Kissy and Poppy have formed a bit of a friendship. So this is just like a fun little backstory about how the two met and how they know each other. But other than that, everything here is like the exact same because I don't have any issues with it and I don't see a need to change it here. I don't think it's bad. So you go through everything, and then the only change is that instead of taking a little elevator thing up and out of there, you just take a little flight of stairs because I'm making you work out. So you go up the stairs and you go to the front door to leave Home Sweet Home. Exiting the building, we'll get a reunion with Kissy and Poppy, but because we were with Kissy at the end of Chapter 2, she doesn't attack us here. Instead, she'll just grab us and Poppy will kind of just show up, saying that she's happy to see that we are still alive. She does her whole like, hey, let's get the power working again, bada boom, we go up the lift, we pull a little lever, push a button or something, and the dome's power comes back on. But there is a difference here. She will warn us that Catnap likes to stalk around, and when the power goes out, we need to be careful because he will go on the hunt. So this introduces a new game mechanic I'm adding for specifically the dome, where there will be a chance encounter every time you enter back into the dome after one of the different missions, that the power could go out and Catnap will begin to stalk you down. It's kind of like my power out thing in my security breach rewrite, if you know what I'm talking about. But basically the whole dome's power will go out and you'll need to go reactivate it before Catnap can kill you. And this will be kind of Catnap's main active hunting sequence. He won't be hunting you really anywhere else, but this is to give him something to do outside of the final battle. So I just thought it'd be fun, and I know you guys wanted to see something like this, so that's why this is here. But after Poppy warns us about Catnap, we all go back down, and she will tell us that her and Kissy are going to try to get the lift down to the below, which is like the doctor prison area, working again, so that, we can get ready to go down there whenever we're done up here. Essentially, they just tell us where they're going to go so they don't just disappear and be like, all right, bye, and then we don't see until the end of the chapter. She tells us where they're going, and they're actually doing something. So, hey, they're helpful. After Poppy and Kissy leave, Vivian will then call us up again. She tells us that we need to go to the school next, but that we need to be careful. Since the Hour of Joy, she hasn't heard or seen anything from in there, so who knows what could be lurking around within the school. Going in this whole section here is pretty much just the exact same. I don't have any issues with it, so I don't want to change something that I really don't have too many issues with. So basically this whole area is the same, except for Miss Delight's like quote-unquote chase sequence. Instead of her being like a weeping angel mechanic where you stare at her and she doesn't move, and when you're not looking she moves, I'm kind of sick of that trope. So instead I'm going back with what her original gameplay mechanic is, or at least pretty close to, and that she moves when the lights go out but freezes when the lights go on. And with the school's power generator being destroyed, the whole building is like on the fritz, so the power's more flickery, she moves a lot more, and need to be more careful about where she is since you can't actually stop her by staring at her. But essentially everything else here is the same. You continue through, you get through the area, you go down that hallway, you pull the lever, and Miss Delight does her little like speedy run and gets crushed by the door. And then you get your flare gun hand, which I don't actually know if you get here, but I'm putting it here. You grab it, and then you go to leave. But since there aren't any caves here, we don't go to the playhouse or whatever. We exit through a series of back hallways that bring us back outside to, you know, the dome outside the school. And that's when Vivian calls us and tells us that because the school's power generator was destroyed, we'll need to get power from a different location, that being the toy store. So going into this rewrite, I knew I wanted to add the toy store back in here because it was a cut location and I thought it'd be super cool to bring back. And I have a pretty fun way to bring it back here, which involves taking the little critters from the playhouse and moving them here, which does mean that the playhouse is going to be different. But essentially, I thought, what better way to have the toy store show up here than it being a toy store with a bunch of toys in it that the little critters can hide amongst. So this whole area would have a front section filled with a bunch of toy shells that would eventually lead to like a back storage warehouse area that also has a ton of storage shells and rooms. And basically the main, I guess, goal here is that you'll need to go around and collect batteries from different locations to continue through a sort of maze that you'll have to work your way through. The batteries will open doors for you that you eventually then will get to like the generator room where you activate the generator. But you're not alone. Like that's not the whole thing. You don't just walk through the room and you call it a day. On these shelves, because there are tons of storage shelves and toy shelves and all that kind of stuff, along these shelves are the little critter toys. There's tons of them here. And amongst these toys are real little critters that you got to look out for. And this brings up a different gameplay mechanic where you need to really listen instead of looking, because you can't tell the difference, but the closer you get to a little critter, like a real one and not one of the just toy ones, you'll hear a bit of like a staticky rattling sound coming from the toys. And when you figure out that there's one there, if you use the flare gun hand on the toys, they'll freak out and they'll run away. So technically you could just shoot the flare gun hand through the whole area and call it a day, which would work as well, but it's just sort of a fun gameplay mechanic that might catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. The sound would be quiet but loud enough for you to hear, so that it's not like unfair or anything like that. But you go through this area, you go through all these different rooms. There would be a secret room that would have the prototype shrine with a bunch of candles surrounding it. It's a secret room instead of it being along the main path, so it does kind of take away from the catnap worshipping thing. But I always felt like that was kind of just shoved into that area anyway. So having it be a secret that you find, I thought would be a lot cooler, because then you actually find something rather than it just kind of being there. But you go through this whole area, you make your way to the generator room. It's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple, but you get there and you activate the generator through some like power puzzle hand scanner thing or whatever. And once you activate the generator, it really stirs up all the little critters and they start swarming you in a huge unkillable swarm that comes from like the back of the room or whatever. So basically this whole swarm of little critters starts chasing you out of the toy store. And you need to run. You need to run through the maze that you just walked through, and you need to get the heck out of the toy store because this unkillable swarm of little critters are chasing you down. The closest thing I can compare this to is from Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga, the Death Star 2 final mission or whatever, where you have to like fly the Millennium Falcon out of the Death Star 2 as it's blowing up and there's all the fire behind you. It's kind of like that, where you just have to run the heck out of there while you're getting chased by an endless swarm of these little critters. But eventually, you make your way out of the toy store, you're free, you can connect the power to the statue, and wait for Vivian to tell you where to go next. So she calls us up and tells us that the next location we need to go to is the playhouse. But she warns us that there's something in there. It's been lurking there for some time. It's been festering for years. And we need to keep an eye open for whatever's down there. Heading into the playhouse, gameplay wise, everything here is pretty close to the same. The puzzles and the actual layout are the same. However, the little critters aren't here, so there's no interaction with them. And for the most part, going through these puzzles is fairly straightforward and easy. You get through, you complete all the puzzles, you activate the generator, and you get to continue forward. But you aren't entirely alone. Something is lurking around. You can see it run past the doorway, or eyes staring at you in the dark. Or you can hear jingling of bells from like a distance. There's something down here stalking you, and it's not Catnap. Eventually though, you make your way through and you get to the jail cell. I was gonna have Dog Day do more. I couldn't think of anything for him to do, honestly. So instead, I added more jail cells with the rest of the smiling critter, bigger bodies, monster creature things. But they're all dead. Dog Day's the last one, but you get to see the other bigger body smiling critters, so they're at least here. But Dog Day's the last one. You go up to him, and instead of it being a part where you can like look around, it activates a cutscene where Dog Day will give his kind of similar speech. He can't see us because his eyes are gouged out by Catnap, so he hears us and he's like, "I hope you're here to help Poppy and the others," and he'll give a little speech, blah 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 blah. But as he gets close to the end, he tells us that we shouldn't have come down here though, because again, something is festering down here and we need to leave now before it finds us. And that's when we hear those bells jingling again, and we'll turn to see none other than Fester, the Jester Fox, show up from at the end of the hall, and he'll kind of start walking towards us. He crawls on all fours, and he'll walk towards us, and we kind of back up in the cutscene. And as he gets towards the cell, he'll turn and he'll see Dog Day and charge at Dog Day. And the second he starts charging, Dog Day will yell at us to run, get out of there. But then we hear Dog Day die because Fester just killed him. And then once Dog Day kind of stops screaming and his voice goes silent, Fester will emerge from the jail cell, his face covered in blood, and he'll start to chase us. But this chase sequence is entirely different from the Dog Day chase sequence. I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of the Dog Day chase sequence. I like him, but his chase sequence kind of just felt like another generic Poppy Playtime chase sequence. So instead, I'm bringing back a cut piece of content from the chapter, and that was this little duck ride that was going to be in the playhouse. I'm reversing the direction you go here, so you start in the jail cell and you'll go backwards on this course, but there's supposed to be a little duck ride that you could go on, and that's coming back here. So when you run and you escape from Fester, you actually go to this duck ride, you get on, and you start going through this course, and Fester can show up through vents or pop up from different props. And if he shows up in the vents, you need to close a vent cover before he jumps out and he attacks you. And if he shows up on the props, then you need to shoot the flare gun to distract him or to, shoo him off, and he'll leave you alone from there. But along the way, you'll need to use the grab pack to open up different gates with levers and stuff like that, making your way through the course. So it is a chase sequence, but it's a little different from the other two that were already in the chapter, just to make it feel a little bit more distinctive from some other stuff. So you go through this whole course, and eventually the duck ride brings you to a storage area for all the different carts. And when you get off, Fester shows up and he starts marching towards you. And that's when you do a little bit of a quick time event that allows you to basically topple over a shelf that will end up crushing Fester and killing him. He's dead. You killed Fester. He showed up for a second and he's dead. Now, some of you guys might be wondering who on earth Fester is, and he was a character I introduced in my Project Playtime rewrite. He's basically based on concept art from Chapter 2's Musical Memory, where he's a Jester Fox. Pretty self-explanatory. And I thought it'd be fun to introduce a third secondary enemy, kind of like the game station had the 3 secondary enemies and then Mommy Longlegs. Here you have 3 secondary enemies when you throw Fester in here, and Catnap's kind of like the primary ultimate enemy, just so that it feels a little more balanced. And for Fester's character, I imagine that he's intelligent like Huggy, where he's thinking a bit more, he's a little bit smarter, but he can't talk. So he's not quite as dumb as Yanabe, but he's also not quite as intelligent as Catnap. He's kind of somewhere in the middle. But that's Fester. He shows up and he's dead. So that's really about it for his character. But you get through that thing. You already activated the generator by doing the puzzles beforehand. So you exit through a set of stairs. Brings you back up to the exit of the playhouse. Then you could take the power cord and put it back into the statue, activating the building's power, and wait for Vivian to tell you where to go next. She'll call us up and tell us that our final location to get the power from is going to be the counselor's office. Now, this area is pretty close to the base game. Again, I've said this countless times. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not going to change it that much. The only major changes are going to be random / also sometimes scripted catnap encounters through this area. So it's not just like he grabs a toy and like that's it. He'll be stalking us throughout this area the whole time as well to keep him an active, ever-present enemy. There also won't be any cave sections because we're not underground in the caves. So instead, there'll just be back hallways that connect you to different areas, and you'll just kind of do most of the same puzzles. And eventually you go to leave, and instead of Catnap being there, he jumps you. Whoa, he takes the mask, and then you freak out by all the red gas that's in there. You get a little bit of like a home sweet home situation where you go to leave the building and Catnap's right on the other side of the doors. Bada boom, you looking for this. He shoots the red gas out in your face, steals your gas mask, and makes you start tripping out, and you enter a hallucination scene. So this hallucination scene is quite a bit different from the base game's hallucination scene, where instead of you just going through like a cycle of still images that you look at and there's like some creepy, narration in the background, instead the narration might still be there, but you get to actually walk around these different distorted maps where you get to explore maps that you've already seen just in a creepier way. I wanted to give this section more interactability, have more stuff for you to do, look around, see more of the different areas in a creepier, distorted way, because I thought it'd just be kind of fun to have it be like you're retraversing the steps you took in the previous 2 chapters to get here in a way. And I just thought it'd be fun to kind of have you explore these maps in a creepier, more disturbing way with Poppy talking all creepy in the background. So I just thought it'd be fun to have you actually do something rather than looking at still images. That's really about it for this scene. But after Kissy pulls us out of the hallucination, she drags us out of the counselor's office, out of the red gas. We wake up from the trance, we see Kissy, we see Poppy, and Poppy's like, good heavens, are you okay? Thank goodness that we got here just in time, because that could have been really bad. She kind of just talks like that. And as Poppy is talking to us, Vivian will also call and make sure that we're okay, that, we didn't die or anything like that. And she'll tell us that we need to go and connect the power, and then we can go with Poppy and Kissy to the red gas, transfer room or whatever, and get this show on the road. So we go connect the power, we walk with Poppy, and this is where Poppy will give us her little hour of joy speech. We're not going to get the videotape VHS thing because it's cool, but I feel like it would almost serve better as one of Mob Entertainment's YouTube ARG kind of a things, rather than just oh, here it is in the thing and you gotta watch it on a little tiny TV. So we don't get to see it, but Poppy will explain her side of the hour of joy, all the people dying, all the screams. It was just senseless murder. But the key thing here is that Poppy actually knew that people were going to die. She was a big part of the hour of joy. She knew that rising up and killing a bunch of the workers was what was going to happen. She went through with it because she figured, hey, we'll get rid of some of these super evil people, we'll rise up and we'll all be free. She didn't think everybody was going to die, but she doesn't let us in on the fact that she knew what was going to happen. So she is lying to us, but it's less of her being evil and lying and more of her being I don't want you to think I'm a bad person, kind of a lie. Little side tangent just for you guys, but that's essentially what Poppy tells us about. And she's like, hey, hour of joy, real bad. But eventually we get to the red gas room. We start up the transfer sequence, and Poppy and Kissy are like, we're going to be right over here in this room. We'll be waiting for you. Just come on over when you're ready, and everything will be great. So we start up the transfer sequence, and as it starts up, we turn to go to join up with Poppy and Kissy, and as we enter the door, Catnap's tail will swing down from the ceiling and close the door in front of us. And we'll look up, and we'll see Catnap clung onto the side of the wall with his tail dangling down super long, as a fun super pull reference to his imagery in the opening cartoon where his tail is super long dangling from the moon. It's a super crazy pull from that, but I just thought it'd be fun to actually show him doing that as just a fun little way to be like, hey, it's Catnap. But he'll see us, we look up and we see him, and when we see him, he'll jump down from the wall, landing on his feet, of course, because he's a cat, and the second he lands, boom, you're looking for this, more red gas in our face, and he shows his nightmare form. The room fills with the red gas, and he shows his nightmare form, which would look a little different from the base game one. I didn't find the base game one all that scary, so I made a quick Photoshop version of what I thought could be kind of spooky. It's not great, but hey, it's better than nothing. So this is what I imagine he would look like in his nightmare form, but he stalks us, and we need to get to the elevator, activate the elevator, and instead of going up, the lift will bring us down. So it brings us down to essentially the same kind of a room, but there's going to be more storage tanks and pipes and stuff like that to show that this room area is the red gas storage room, if you will. And so this is where most of it is kept, at least within Playcare. Also, just a little side note, the prototype VHS tape when he's talking to the doctor will also still be here. I know I talked about how the tapes are all going to be still here, but I thought I'd mention that one specifically because I like that tape. So it would still be here, but basically this whole room area is going to be utilized for the final boss fight, which will be somewhat similar to the base game. You have to charge up a supercharge for the green hand, but instead of the batteries being like, you have to try to move them from different locations and like you're in the same spot the entire time, the opening phase will be you looking for 4 batteries to plug in to start the charge up sequence, and you have to traverse the entire room, but Catnap is around there stalking you as well, and this is where the fake Catnap, real Catnap thing comes into play, where you need to use the flare gun or your regular grab pack hands, I guess, to see which Catnap is real and which one is the fake one. And so if you shoot off the hand or the flare gun and then he turns into a puff of smoke, cool, you found the fake one. If it's the real one, you kind of got to turn and hightail it out of there because he'll start chasing you. Eventually you can like hide or run away from him enough to lose him and keep looking for the batteries. Once you find all the batteries, then it kind of goes to the base game-ish gameplay style where Catnap will walk down one of the 4 hallways or multiple hallways at the same time, and you need to figure out which one's actually him and which one's the fake one as the charging sequence starts up, and you have to wait like a minute or 2 for the charging to actually, complete. But he'll be walking down these hallways, and instead of you jumping around and like electrocuting things or whatever, you just have to close doors on whichever one is the real Catnap. But you obviously can't close every door because you need both grab pack hands to close the doors, so you need to be certain that the Catnap walking towards you is the real one and not a fake one, because if you close it on a fake one, you might not have time to close it on the real one. So just a slight tweak to the gameplay for the main final boss, but eventually the charging sequence is completed. You get the cutscene where you grab the power and Catnap jumps down from the top, which he can also still attack from. I didn't mention that, but he can still attack from the top. But he jumps down and he's ready to kill us. And this would all be like full cutscene. There's no interactability here. You don't have to shoot the grab pack hand because I didn't know you had to do that the first time and it pissed me off. So it's all a cutscene and he'll be right in front of our face. And the second he starts to use the red gas to spray out of his mouth, we shoot the grab pack hand, the green hand, and it hits directly on that like the little puff release thing in his mouth. I don't know what you call it. We'll hit that directly in his mouth and it'll ignite all of the red gas within Catnap, and we pull a bit of a General Grievous. He lights on fire from the inside and he'll run around frantic. He's burning up, and eventually he'll kind of topple to the ground, letting out one final little burst of fire from his mouth and his eyes, and he'll collapse dead. So we kill Catnap. The prototype doesn't kill Catnap, we kill Catnap. But the second Catnap dies, the door opens on the ceiling and the prototype's hand descends from the top. But instead of it being in like a menacing or cold way, it's kind of reaching out, palm towards Catnap, reaching out. And it almost is like he's checking to see if Catnap's still alive. He puts a hand on Catnap and you can see the prototype's arm physically kind of like sag, like he's sighing. And then he'll scoop Catnap up. He won't stab him, he won't grab him. He'll scoop up Catnap in his arm and drag him back up through the ceiling. Closing the door, the prototype now has Catnap's body that he'll add to his own. But the key thing I wanted to add here is that the prototype is genuinely sad that Catnap is dead. He's not like, oh, I hated this cat and thank goodness he's dead. He's genuinely sad because he was friends with Theodore, and I mean, in the game itself, he brought Theodore back to make sure that he would survive after the whole like accident with the grab packs. He brings Theodore back to make sure that they can save him. I don't know why he'd want Catnap dead. So instead, he's sad that Catnap died, but still takes his body to make him of some use to the prototype yet. So that's kind of the big change, but outside of that, we get done, we go back up the elevator, and we can go meet up with Kissy and Poppy. So getting back up there, we can open the door, finish off the final sequence that we need to do to transfer the gas or whatever, and head on into the room to go down the lift with Poppy, as Kissy has to stay behind to activate the lift or whatever for some reason. But she stays up there, and as the lift goes down, Poppy tells us that the place we're going, the below, is a dangerous, dangerous place. The rejected Bigger Bodies Initiative toys, they're all down here. So these toys have never seen the light of day, and they've also never been like publicly released toys. So these are all dangerous toys that we need to be careful about because we don't know what they could be doing. And as we descend, we then hear Kissy get attacked by something, and Poppy starts freaking out. She's like, Kissy, no, and like the door ceiling or whatever. But we also hear the voice of a kid. And the kid is talking. We can't hear what they're saying, but we hear the voice of a young boy talking, which would end up being Oliver, the prototype. Just a little hint at who he actually is. But we get to hear the prototype's main actual voice for the first time, the voice of Ollie. We don't hear what he says, but we hear him talking as he attacks Kissy, and Poppy freaks out. No, the lid seals on the elevator, and boom, that's the end of the chapter. So the chapter starts with a VHS tape, the beginning of which would tell us that we shouldn't watch it. It's one of those like authorized personnel only, do not watch the following tape. It will then cut to a scrapped ad for Doughy, because in my rewrite universe, Doughy and some of the other toys that we see down here are actually scrapped toy lines that never got released. So in Doughy's case, he actually made it through the concept phase, made it through the production phase, and was ready to be released with advertising until the incident with Jack, which we see intermixed in this ad, where we see him walking down the catwalk, he falls into the vats, tons of people are screaming, and as they're screaming, it'll cut back to the Doughy commercial. He's dancing and waving on screen, and the screaming can still be heard in the background, and then boom, title card. The gameplay part of the chapter then opens up with us descending down the lift, and Poppy, super serious, tells us that she's going back up for Kissy. She will never leave anyone behind. Definitely not foreshadowing for the end of the chapter. She will then tell us that we should be able to get to Safe Haven with the help of Vivian, who, if you haven't seen the other parts, is sort of like my phone Ollie replacement. And Poppy also goes on to say that we will get help from others, from our allies. As the lift goes back up, she tells us to look out for what they call the demon, and then she gets cut off by a steam jump scare from saying the doctor. Vivian then calls us up and says that she'll do her best to lead us to where we need to go. We traverse through some caves and some hallways, leading us out to the big open courtyard with all of the big dead toy piles, just like the base game. Now, throughout the areas we traversed, you can actually see security cameras following us around, and even see the doctor's eye on TV screens showing that he is watching us, but he doesn't announce himself yet. As we approach the prison, Vivian will call us, saying that this place is indeed a prison. All of the most dangerous and forgotten toys were kept here. The failed experiments and early prototypes of the future Bigger Bodies programs were kept here as well. So essentially my version of the prison is a way to explain away why some of the toys shown off here, Doughy, Yanabe, Pianosaurus, why they don't show up in earlier chapters is because these were experimental experiments, I guess you could say, that were never officially released to the public, toy line wise, and these were maybe failed experiments, stuff like that. So that's why they were never shown off in the earlier chapters, to at least give it some explanation rather than no explanation. Anyways, after Vivian tells us about this stuff, we head into the open prison door, which doesn't close on our face this time, but the second we walk in, then it starts to close, alarms start to go off, and Vivian, frantic, tries to warn us to get out of there and that he's found us, before getting cut off and, going into garbled static. The door closes, and a TV screen with a security camera next to it turns on, and we get to see the doctor's eye. He then introduces himself, and he says that he tends to run things down here. He's been watching us since we've arrived at the factory, and didn't think that we would get down here so fast. He hasn't gotten any of his big surprises or tests ready yet, so we'll have to settle with something a little bit easier. He opens the door to let us further into the prison. Walking further in, you can enter that like central room with the desk in it from like the teasers and was in the game for like 30 seconds. You can head into that room, and the doctor over at the intercom will tell you that cell block A is ready for our testing. He then opens the doors to cell block A, which would just be one of the pathways off of the room. But this is actually where the first of a couple small side missions that you can do. This is the first one of those like side missions. And here, you have to solve a small puzzle in order to unlock the back offices and the warden's office. In there, you can find some stuff like lore notes, as well as a VHS tape about the theater incident. And it'll include Stella, Leith, Eddie, and Dr. White, and they talk about how a number of experiments were released into the theater in an attempt to rise up against Playtime leadership. The important thing to note here is that the prototype was amongst the ones released in the theater. It is revealed that the doctor actually helped the experiments in the attempt in order for the doctor himself to seize more power from Playtime leadership and usurp it from Leith. They then talk about what to do with Sawyer. So essentially this tape I want to have explain away the theater incident as essentially a prototype, yes, kind of pun intended, version of the Hour of Joy. So the toys, with the help of the doctor, rise up in an attempt to do the same thing the Hour of Joy ended up doing, but this one failed because the doctor, I'm thinking, backstabbed them and got them all caught again. But here is to show that the theater incident in my version is a basically early attempt at the Hour of Joy. But getting back to the chapter itself, we enter into cell block A, and the layout of the map here would be largely similar to the cell blocks in the base game, maybe just a little bit larger, but on the whole, it's pretty much the same design. But once you enter in this area, the doctor will then come over the intercom and tell you that he's witnessed our ability to survive these creatures on numerous occasions, and believes that we will be able to do so again here. However, he says that he wants to add a new face into the scene, something fresh, something new, something we haven't gone up against yet. No giant cats, no big spiders, no whatever Huggy is, he wants something new. He'll then set the place into sort of like an emergency alarm mode where most of the lights will turn off with a few dim red lights turning on, and he'll open up one of the cells. And out from that cell walks none other than Pianosaurus. So yes, Pianosaurus is in my version of Chapter 4, and he's actually going to do something more than he does in the base game. While this isn't going to be some crazy complex thing, he is at least here, and I knew I had to have him do something other than show up and die. So he is here, and he does have a kind of boss fight. Essentially, this is sort of a run around for a certain amount of time and don't die. So it is a pretty kind of just basic straight line gameplay section, but it is still early on in the chapter and our first real interaction with like a hostile enemy. So making it a little bit easier, I think, makes some sense. But essentially, what I imagine for the cell block layout is that there would be multiple different cell blocks connected to each other. So a bunch of cells connected into like a larger cell block map. So we'd have more space to run around from Pianosaurus. But he's not the only one here with us, because we'll start to get help from a certain doughy hand who will point us in the right direction, do stuff to help delay Pianosaurus, and generally help us out to where we need to go, which eventually he'll lead us to a sort of transfer room where you would enter, close one door, and then open the door in front of you so that you don't, let anything out that isn't supposed to be out of the cell blocks. But once you enter this room, a cutscene will start where Pianosaurus will run in, cornering us in this room, and right when he is about to strike, Doughy's hand will shoot down from the ceiling, slamming Pianosaurus in the ground, before thrashing him around and tossing him back out into the cell block. Then, based on / pretty much just the same shot from one of the trailers, Doughy will sort of fall through this mesh ceiling and collapse into a bunch of different dough piles on the ground before reforming himself into his full form and hitting us with his "Hiya there, pal." He'll then give us his little speech about how he's here to help, and that Vivian told him ahead of time to keep an eye out for our arrival. He'll then activate the transfer room and lead us through to a set of sort of back hallways and other rooms that we have to solve a couple puzzles for to get through, kind of like the base game where he leads you to like the courtyard and through some hallways and stuff like that. And eventually he'll bring us to that sort of kitchen-like area where you have to like move the one cabinet or whatever, and he'll bring us down the hallway and lead us up to the gates of Safe Haven. Biggest change here is there's no prototype Shadow and there's no Poppy and Kissy hiding in the wall yet. It'll be here, just not yet. But heading inside of Safe Haven, Doey will tell us more about this place and that many toys here call this place home. The toys that do live here are tired of the bloodshed and the fighting, and they just want to see a peace amongst the toys and amongst the different factions within the factory. And this is closer to being achieved now that Mommy Longlegs and Catnap are out of the picture. And with them gone, they stand a better chance of even making it out of the factory and back into the real world to escape the horrors of this facility. But Doey will then tell us that we must be tired and that we should take a moment to rest here. We should look around, talk to some of the residents, see if they need help with anything, and just take a moment to relax before moving on with the next part of the mission. So one of the things I knew I needed to include within this rewrite were the optional side quest mission things. I think bringing them back would really help give Safe Haven some more life, like bring life to this location that it really kind of lacks in the base game. And so bringing those side missions in will help you connect with the characters and like the toys there a little bit more, making their deaths at the end of the chapter, which is going to stay, a bit more significant and actually make you kind of feel more for them, seeing as you actually got to interact with them instead of just a bunch of toys standing around not doing anything. And kind of speaking of them just kind of standing around not doing anything, another way I wanted to bring Safe Haven to life would be to have some of the toys actually walking around. So they'll go from location to location, walking around, just kind of doing random NPC movements from place to place, but make it feel more alive. Like, hey, there's actually toys moving around the location. It makes it feel more alive. So that was another way that I think could also boost up Safe Haven and make it feel a bit more, lived in. But once you spend your time here, you've done whatever missions you want to do, and you've spent as much time as you want to in Safe Haven, you can go talk to Doey and continue through the chapter. Doey will then bring us to the generator room, and he will kind of give us the rundown of the general story / goals for this chapter. Their generator really isn't working anymore, and I imagine that the scene where it like shuts off and he goes, give it a second, that would still be here because I like him like just kind of acting like an annoyed person. It's just kind of fun to see Doey acting normal. So their generator here really isn't working, and they need to get it working again and repaired and fixed up in order for them to be able to come up with a better game plan moving forward. If he can get the generator working again and they have full power, they now have all of that generator power to use for when they want to leave, because he does want to save who he can and leave the factory. But there's two major issues here. First, they need new parts for the generator in order to repair it, and they need the Omni Hand to actually access the internals of the generator. The problem is that the Doctor has the Omni Hand, and Doey says that we aren't ready to face him down yet. He's still too powerful. We need to come up with a better plan to face him down, but for now, instead of sitting around, we should go collect the generator parts that we need so that we can at least have them so that when we get the Omni Hand, we're ready to fix the generator. So the ultimate reason for him wanting to fix the generator is, again, so that they can get the power needed to escape the factory. That's essentially his ultimate goal for fixing up the generator. But with that, he'll send us out to deep storage to collect the parts needed for the generator. After sending us out through these sewers, we can then head to that same cave area where Barry the Cart makes his legendary return. Also here, I didn't forget him this time. I forgot him last time. He was supposed to be in the counselor's office. This time, I didn't forget him. Braun shows up. If you don't know, Braun shows up in all my rewrites as just a fun little Easter egg. And this time, he shows up in this cave area, doing his same old thing of just staring at us with his rotating head. It goes 360. He just stares at us, but he doesn't move. He doesn't do anything else except for that. Just being same old Braun. But you can go through there, do the little cart power puzzle thing, go through that one gate area that'll bring you into a vehicle storage room. And on the other side of this room is another large gate that's labeled deep storage. So you go over there to try to open it. There's like the blue and red hand scanner. And when you try to open it, that's when the Doctor appears on a TV screen above the door. And he'll start telling us that he wasn't impressed with our first test. We only survived thanks to that creature that causes him so much trouble. But that doesn't matter anymore because the doughy factor has been taken out of this particular equation. And the doctor's making sure to have even more exciting results because he's picked his most prized and favorite experiment. The one, the only, Yanabe. So yes, this is Yanabe's first introduction within my rewrite. That means that his earlier introductions wouldn't be here. We don't get him in the glass room. We don't get any of that kind of stuff. Instead, his first introduction is his main gameplay section, which here is going to be the exact same for the most part. I talked about the area where he can like vent through the walls and you have to like hide in those little cracks in the walls and do the blue hand scanner stuff. That's this main section. This is his sort of introductory boss section. And the only parts that start to change are near the end. So you go through his whole area, you solve all those puzzles, you do all that kind of stuff. And when you get to the doors that would lead to his final chase sequence, instead, it leads to sort of the start of his chase sequence. He starts chasing you through a set of like hallways and storage rooms that eventually lead you into the morgue. The same room that's the morgue in the base game where like your hand gets frozen on the one scanner and whatever. But there are a couple differences here. So we run into this room, the door closes behind us, and Yanabe starts banging on the door to try to get in. We go to leave the room because there isn't going to be the doctor's lungs or organs or whatever. I'm not a big fan of that. It kind of just seemed really odd and out of place. So that section is going to be gone. Instead, we use our blue hand to try to use a blue hand scanner to leave the room. The doctor freezes it. He goes on his little rant about like, I'm super cool, I'm super evil, I'm the best, and you're just a big old dumb idiot. And the timed section of this room won't be freezing. It'll be Yanabe breaking in and killing us. So we need to cut the blue hand off of the one grab pack, use it to stop the freezing, and then we can use the blue hand scanner to leave the room. Once we do so, Yanabe will start chasing us again, and we have to run through another set of hallways that'll bring us in, transition us into a set of caves, which will lead us to the pit, which is a map from my Project Playtime rewrite, and is essentially just a big hole in the ground. And here there's one catwalk that you can use to get across. Every other path across is blocked or broken. So you run across this one catwalk to get across this big pit in the ground. And as you try to cross, Yanabe will also try to cross it following you. And it'll slowly start to kind of crack and break apart. You can kind of tell it's going to break under the weight of you guys running across it. So when you get to the other side, there'll be a little bit of a quick time event where you have to pull some parts of the catwalk off, which will lead to it collapsing. Yanabe jumps, tries to climb onto the side of the pit. He can't quite get a grip onto the side. He falls off and tumbles down into the pit, and that's the last we see of Yanabe. After watching Yanabe fall down into the pit, we'd have to go over to the only doorway you can go to. The only spot you can go to is where you're going to head to now. And once you approach said doorway, there's a TV screen there that lights up, and the doctor shows up again, saying that he is disappointed to see that Yanabe had to die, but he's impressed with our test results. We managed to survive this time around on our own accord. Well, he's done with his test for now. He leaves us with a warning saying that he does have more tests planned in the future and to be aware of our surroundings. He then leaves and the door in front of us opens. Walking inside, you enter one of those like transfer rooms, kind of like the one I mentioned earlier with Doey, but more so like the ones from Chapter 5 where they have like the chemical sprays and stuff like that. It's one of those kind of rooms, but when you enter in, the door closes behind you, but the door in front of you is jammed, and there's a grab pack hand attached to the door. And then obviously there would be a line attached to the person with the grab pack, who's obviously dead. But this hand is attached to the door because this introduces a new hand I'm adding to this chapter. The pressure hand from Chapter 5. Now I know I say I don't include future chapter elements in previous chapters, but I'm making an exception for the pressure hand because one, I think it could be really cool in the Chapter 4 settings, especially what I have it intended to do, and because I think Chapter 4 is missing any actual like useful new hands except for Omni Hand. So having a new hand here and one less in the next chapter, I think would just balance things out a little bit more. But the pressure hand here would be used to clear out like rocky debris, break through glass like in Chapter 5. Like it would be kind of similar to the one in Chapter 5, but also used to clear out more elements in your way. And an idea brought up by this person in a couple different comments where they wanted to introduce a new hand that could be used to open jammed doors. I'm taking that aspect and adding it to the pressure hand so that it could be used to open jammed doors. Case in point, the door we need to get through now. So you use it to open the door and enter into this next area. So entering into this area, it's basically just that red gas maze with all the surgery rooms and that kind of stuff. Only difference is that instead of finding a code, you have to use batteries that are hidden throughout to open up doors to progress through the maze. So it's just a little bit more tricky, but just minus the code essentially. But the whole area is pretty much the same. And the only other thing you can do here is that there is a VHS tape that would have Leith and Sawyer talking about the experiments, how Sawyer is doing his best to try to figure out their secrets, but Dr. Whitman has been denying his requests for further testing on 1006 and has denied any testing to be done at all on 1007. So essentially this is just to show that Dr. Whitman is high enough in the company to deny Sawyer his requests for further operations to be done on these experiments. So Sawyer is the head of all the surgeries and the experiments, but Dr. Whitman is a step above that. And it's to also show that Dr. Whitman has a certain sort of protective attitude towards 1006 and 1007, in case you need a refresher, Prototype, and Poppy. But aside from that stuff, you can make your way out of the area eventually and find yourself back where Yarnaby first showed up. Entering into that room now, deep storage, you can find Dowie looking around behind shelves and stuff, looking for us. And when we approach him, a cutscene starts where Dowie runs over and is happy to see that we're okay, as he was worried something bad had happened to us. But as he gets closer to us, a freeze trap goes off, freezing him, and we now have to go deactivate that. And once we do get the trap turned off, he talks about how the freezing hurts, and he gets angry before he calms himself down and focuses back up on what he was saying. He says that he's here to help us out now, look for those generator parts, but he was also hoping to find some evidence of Poppy as she still hasn't shown up at Safe Haven, and he was starting to get worried. So he helps us out in this area, and this section would be a little bit more of a calm section, not any enemies to deal with. It's a bit more of a calm section, but it's also a teamwork section with Dowie, where you have to work with Dowie to solve certain puzzles to progress further and unlock and get more of those generator parts. But once you collect all of them, you'll make your way back out to the start. Dowie will be like, all right, cool, we got the generator parts. I'll meet you back at Safe Haven. He'll take one of those Mario warp pipe things, the random pipes that he can climb into. He'll take one of those back to Safe Haven, and we have to make our way back through the caves. Walking back through the cave, we head over to the door about to go back in when we are grabbed by Kissy Missy and dragged behind a rock formation. Poppy's also back there and tells us to shush, be quiet. We then hear the sound of metal clinking on rock, and the Prototype shows up. Obviously we don't see him, but his shadow is projected on the rock wall behind us, and you can see his spider legs and even his hands. He then starts to approach the rock formation, and he reaches a hand over the rock formation, grabbing onto it. Right before he sees us though, static comes up and Sawyer comes over the intercom, saying that he's surprised to see 1006 has decided to come here. He should know by now that he shouldn't travel through his domain. The Prototype, actually scared of Sawyer, runs off, and Kissy, Poppy, and us emerge from behind the rocks. So this is just a little bit to show that Sawyer is actually a powerful force to be dealt with, and that the Prototype is actually a little bit scared of Sawyer, so that when the Doctor shows back up at the end of Chapter 5 and in Chapter 6, he has more of a reason of being there, rather than just oh hey, didn't I kill you super easily, and you don't have any sort of threat factor whatsoever. It's hey, the Prototype is actually scared of the Doctor, hence a good reason to bring him back. But he runs off. We walk back with Kissy and Poppy to Safe Haven, and as we go there, Poppy will tell us that he followed them down here, the Prototype, and that they've been lucky in avoiding him so far, but they just need to make it back to Safe Haven. Traveling back up there and through the sewers, we enter back into the hospital area, and Dowie runs over, surprised to see Poppy with us, but is also very concerned about Kissy's injuries. After the medic bot starts to take care of Kissy, Poppy will call us and Dowie into the generator room for a bit of a meeting. Poppy will then go on to say that she's reassuming control over the resistance, obviously making Doughy a bit angry and upset, and he'll get so angry, in fact, that he'll actually grow his teeth and a new third arm on his back to show that he's starting to lose control over his form, and that Kevin is taking more control over Doughy's functions than Matthew is. Poppy will then reassure Doughy to try to calm him down, saying that she's not trying to take control because he's doing a bad job, because he's not. He's done such a great job, but she's just trying to ease the burden on Doughy so that he doesn't have to suffer as much, is essentially how she words it. She manipulates him into calming down. Now, my point here is to show that Poppy will manipulate and control who she needs to achieve her goals. She's very much like the prototype in that regard. But she's not evil. Like, her ultimate plan does kind of make sense, right? You get rid of everybody, allow these toys, these kids who, were once kids are now toys, to move on, and just to take out everybody. And she wants to take out everybody. Herself, the prototype, us, Doughy, everybody and everything is going to be gone so that nobody has to remember this place and nobody can come back and do this again. Doughy, on the other hand, wants to actually save who he can down here in Safe Haven, evacuate up to the surface, escape with whoever they can, and then destroy the place and remove all of the evil that's within Playtime. So they butt heads and they argue quite a bit about that point. But eventually Poppy tells us that now is the time to strike the Doctor and that we should leave immediately to face him down. Doughy, on the other hand, says that we should take a minute to rest because we've been through so much, and then if we need to, we can go spend some more time in Safe Haven. So if you decide to stay and do these new side missions, some of these will include checking up on Kissy and just sort of hanging around the place again. If you decide to just leave right away, or if you do the side missions and then you leave, you'll get a call from Vivian. That's right, I didn't forget about her. She shows up, well, doesn't show up, she calls us up on the phone and tells us how to get to where we need to go face the Doctor. We go back out into those caves, we take an alternate route from the caves to a tram system, being led by her directions, which eventually leads us up to the Doctor's main lair, where she wishes us the best of luck facing down the Doctor. Heading inside, you'll need to swing across a gap in the floor in order to make it across to the other point, but as you swing, the Doctor will shock you, sending you tumbling down into a room. This room is where the Baba Chops fight scene would occur, except the Baba Chops isn't really one of the characters here, so the fight scene here is a little bit different. However, there are a few Easter egg characters for you guys, not actually like if this was a real game, but for you guys, there's a few Easter egg characters here that might be kind of fun. So one of them is actually Baba Chops in one of these cages in the room, because there's a bunch of cages around the room. So Baba Chops is here looking a little more Smiling Critter-y rather than Nightmare Critter, to kind of imply that they were once supposed to be a Smiling Critter but then got cut from the lineup. Just sort of like a fun little thing. And this person brought up these things that are kind of like food formers, that's what I call them, but they're like food transformer toys. But as we're down here, the Doctor will then take over the intercom and say that he isn't done with us yet. This is our final test. And he saved the best for last. As a former employee of the company, we must remember what happens to those employees who know too much. As he opens a large cage, we can see a box inside until it breaks apart and reveals Boxy Boo. That's right, he's here and he's hunting us down. I've been making very obvious references that he was gonna show up here, and so he's finally paid off and he's finally showing up here, taking the place of Baba Chops to give us something fun and to have Boxy Boo actually show up. Now, this fight scene would be kind of similar. We have to run around this area, solve a couple puzzles. In this case, there's no choose to kill the Smiling Critter or the Nightmare Critter or whatever it is, because it kind of just feels a little shoved in here. Instead, you need to use batteries and key cards and other stuff to unlock an emergency lift while also avoiding Boxy Boo. Now, just like my Chapter 2 rewrite, our character is injured from falling and being electrocuted, so we would be slower and kind of hobbling around, but Boxy Boo would be chasing us down the whole time. Now, they'd be a little bit more fair, so he's not just going to be like constantly killing us, because obviously that's not fair, but he does have a few tricks up his sleeve in order to combat us. He can jump in front of us, making us have to either turn or turn around, or he can hide in his box form and if we turn a corner, we might not see him right away, and he can jump up, surprise us, and we'd only have a few seconds of reaction time before he'd jump us. But this is just a fun sort of hurrah to give Boxy Boo some main chapter treatment. But eventually we get the emergency lift going, we go up and we escape, and Boxy Boo is left down there, never actually getting killed. Now that you're back up there, you'll enter the doctor's main lair, where you go up a large flight of stairs that would be like that one hallway with all the TVs and monitors in it, but this is a flight of stairs instead, where the same thing would be there, a bunch of TVs, his eye will appear on all of them, leading us up to the top, where eventually he'll disappear. We then enter the door at the top, bringing us into his main room, where we get to see his robotic suit hooked up to a bunch of wires and stuff, connecting him to everything around himself. This would be a cutscene, and he would look at us with his eye on the TV screen, he'll give us a little wave, and we'll fall beneath the floor. We'll then fall into the boss area, which layout-wise would be pretty similar to the base game's one. However, there are a few differences here. First of all, there's absolutely no light in this area whatsoever, so we have to use the grab pack flashlight to look around. Gameplay-wise, we don't need to go around and look for batteries. I've already done that a couple times in my rewrite here. Instead, we need to go disable 4 or 5 servers or data towers that contain the doctor's consciousness. Instead of there being organs and stuff like I mentioned earlier that I got rid of, instead there's these data towers that contain his consciousness digitally. So he's all just computerized. He's not actually organs, breathing, any of this kind of stuff. He's all just based on a computer. So we need to go around and we need to disable these 4 or 5 servers or data towers, but obviously we aren't alone down here. The doctor is here, and he is just his one robotic body. There aren't multiple robots, it's just him, and he will use every trick he has to try to stop us. He'll hide in the dark and appear right in front of us to jump scare us. He might be hanging from the ceiling with the wires so that we don't see him drop down on us, and he also has a grab pack. He has one because he has the Omni hand, and instead of it being a little code that we need to use to upgrade our hand, he actually has a grab pack with the Omni hand on it, and he uses that and the other grab pack hand to open and close doors and pathways in different areas so that he can throw us off as we try to make our way through the area. So it's basically like a shifting maze as he shifts the different areas around us. But eventually you'll make your way through this area, you'll disable all the towers, and the last one will give you a battery that will allow you to go back up to the main room through a flight of stairs. You get back up to the main room, and you can see his robotic body up there again, and he will do what he can to stop you, but he's much slower and he's not as capable as he was before. What we need to do now is use our grab pack to pull the wires out from his back to shut him down completely so that he's dead. But he will still use his grab pack and other methods to try and kill us, chasing us around using the grab pack to shift things around, stuff like that. But eventually we pull out all the wires and he starts to collapse to the floor, shutting down. The place will spark a bit before it goes silent. And as he's laying there, his robotic body shutting down, he's dying, he will tell us that he knows why we are here. And I guess to kind of quote what he would say, "I know what you seek, he won't forgive you." In a bit more of a slowed and kind of dying voice. But once he says that, he dies. But he doesn't actually, because he comes back in chapter 5. So on a central access terminal that we won't ever use, you'll see a little loading screen with 3 little dots loading that says attempting to connect. So it could be it's attempting to reconnect to his body, but it can't. But it's also kind of hey, it's attempting to connect somewhere else to hint that he is still alive. But now that he's dead, you can go take the Omni hand from his grab pack and continue on with the story. So now you can head back to Safe Haven, taking the same route that you came here from to get back to, Safe Haven. And once you go back there, you'll head inside. Doey is happy to hear that the doctor is defeated, and Poppy is happy to see that we have the Omni hand. And then, like the base game, here Vivian will call us, saying that the prototype is here, and Doey and Poppy freak out. Poppy tells Doey to go stop the prototype. He runs off, but the difference now is that Poppy's going to actually stay with us to help us fix the generator. So she doesn't really do anything, she just guides us through what to do, but she's at least doing something, she's at least trying to help, and she doesn't just go, "All right, fix the generator with Ollie," and I'm just gonna leave. She's trying to be a little bit more helpful. So she'll help us fix the generator. Once we get done, she'll tell us to go back out into the caves, go to the foundations, which I don't know if it would be the same name, but we're supposed to go there and transfer the red gas to the labs because we're not blowing up the foundations in this version. So instead, we have to transfer the red gas to the labs. So you can head out and go do this part. For the most part, it's going to be the exact same as the base game, with the puzzle itself being the same, minus the explosives that you have to go collect. But there are a bunch of little toys that will be attacking you while you try to do this puzzle. Now, they won't be nightmare critters because obviously they don't exist, but instead you'll have like little critters, little wuggies, the little mommy long legs toys, and even some like little PJ Puckapillars or cat bees or stuff like that. Like a wide variety of toys that will come and attack you. Obviously they're all the small version, but just to kind of give some more variety to the little toys without it just feeling overly repetitive. But anyway, you get through this part, you fend off the little toys. Eventually, when you actually complete the puzzle, they'll sort of start a little chase sequence where you have to make your way through a bunch of different caves, eventually looping your way back to the entrance of the foundations, where Doughy will grab you, starting his cutscene, saying like, hey, I lost the prototype somewhere in the caves. And he'll also then ask us if we've completed our mission and transferred the gas. And right as he says that, boom, safe haven blows up. He does his like, oh no, and he leaves to go back, and we also make our way back up there. Entering the remains of Safe Haven, it's like completely destroyed, toy bodies all over the place, and we can hear Doughy crying in the distance. When you approach him in that main central room, he'll start to talk, saying that Poppy wasn't even here. She knew this was going to happen, and this is her fault. She wanted everybody dead, she said so, and she started with them. But you, and he does like the thing and he points at you, we wanted to help her, and we only ever listened to her. We never stood up for Doughy. We never really did anything that he wanted to do. We never joined his side. We only ever sided with Poppy, who wants everybody dead. This is also our fault. We clearly don't care, and we never did. And then he turns into angry monster Doughy, and he starts chasing us. And this first part of the chase sequence, like his main chase sequence, is pretty much near identical to the base game. So instead of us fighting in this big cave area thing like in the base game that I thought was a little cool but a little odd, instead we end up in a cryostasis room, a huge cryostasis room meant to hold the orphans. But they aren't here. The orphans are a plot that I don't entirely know what to do with in my rewrites, but I have a plan in mind-ish, and the idea is that they were being kept here by the prototype, but not anymore. So they aren't here, but this is where they would have been held. But anyway, this room is a big room. We have to avoid Doughy's attacks. He can attack through vents in the walls, ceilings, floors, stuff like that. And essentially what we have to do is get him to chase us down, break different cryostasis tube pipe things so that like the freeze will freeze him. And after we do this enough times, eventually he'll freeze solid, and that's when we can go to leave. So when we leave, we'll exit through a different door and find ourselves in sort of like a big crusher grinder room. And when you look around, you can see crushed up remains of poppy flowers. And this is where they would actually grind down the poppies into the gel. So what they would do, there's also cryostasis tubes along the walls. So what they would do is get a huge clump of poppy flowers to throw in here, freeze them all, and then crush them down at the big grinder to make, or at least start making, the poppy gel. But as we walk through here, there's a blue and red hand scanner like the base game. We go to use that. Doughy breaks through the doors behind us, grabs us because he's super angry and still upset, and we need to activate the crusher and freeze Doughy again, and that will cause the thing to start collapsing on top of him. And as it's crushing him, it'll eventually slow down and stop, and he starts to die. And as he's dying, he will say that he's sorry. He knows that it wasn't our fault, and that he is sorry. Very much like the base game, because that part was so sad. And then you would see him slowly melt away, his dough melting and sliding off of the platform. Leaving out the door that you were going to, you make your way into a set of back hallways, eventually leading you to a storage room. And there, you can find Poppy and Kissy. Poppy will yell at us saying that we transferred the red gas to Safe Haven and asking why we would do that. The phone then starts up, and Poppy will ask if Vivian is there. We then hear her voice saying the exact location that we are in. Poppy will ask what's going on, and Vivian will say that it should be obvious. We've done everything for him. And the voice slowly moves to the mixture of voices that the prototype has. You know, like the whole modulating different voices thing. It'll transfer to that. And he will tell us that he was the one that transferred the gas. Of course, we started the transferring process. All he had to do was change the destination. He'll then say that we've also taken out 3 of his most powerful enemies, Mommy Longlegs, the Doctor, and Doughy. And he'll say their names and use their voices to say their respective names, because I think that'd be so creepy if he says, here's some of the main characters that you've taken out that are like were in his way, and he uses their voices. I think it would just be kind of cool. And note that he doesn't say Catnap because he didn't want Catnap dead. So yeah, keep that in mind. He'd then go on and tell Poppy that she needs to join him again. He can save everyone here, end all the suffering, but he just needs her to join him. Poppy will say no and runs off through a vent in the wall. The prototype will then tell us that he still has use for us, well, at least us, the outsider, the player, and not Kissy Missy. His hand will then swing down from above, knocking us out of the room and closing the door behind us. And then, after a couple seconds, an explosion will go off, collapsing the storage room onto Kissy Missy. We then get up, not really knowing what happens to Kissy Missy after this, and we are forced to head down the only available path. It'll lead us through a huge field of poppies, like the room at the end of Chapter 4, except like imagine it being way bigger, like a huge room with tons of fields of poppies in them. And we have to go over to that one like transfer room or whatever, and inside you can play the tape where Leith Pierre's like, you know, you shouldn't have come down here because you're going to get shot or killed or eaten or whatever. And then Huggy Wuggy will charge the door, start attacking and yelling at us, and that's when the chapter ends. The chapter opens with a VHS ad for Poppy. In fact, it's the same one from Chapter 1, except this one is a bit different. It's corrupted and glitching out, and it'll cut to footage of blueprints for Experiment 1006, codenamed Prototype. We will also see cut footage of blurry and rushed shots of surgery scenes with doctors frantically moving around. After the ad does the "What's the time? Playtime!" we get to see the prototype's hand lift up off a surgery table, and then we hear Dr. Whitman's voice say, "Can you hear me?" Title card! So the game opens very much like the base game, where Huggy will be chasing us down through the labs. We run through different hallways and vents, eventually leading us to a red hand scanner that we need to use to open a vent. Once it is done scanning, a cutscene will then begin, where we enter the vent and we'll hear Huggy yelling at us right behind us. We'll turn around and Huggy will be right there reaching into the vent. He'll grab our standard red hand, ripping it off of the grab pack. He'll then turn and look at it before turning back and looking at us, yelling at us as the vent door closes in his face. So I think a major issue a lot of people had, including myself, with Chapter 5, was that we get the Omni Hand, we have our grab pack, and then we lose it almost immediately in the chapter. So all this stuff we've collected, this super important hand, is just gone. And then like 5 minutes later, we just get a grab pack anyway. So I think instead of losing all of our progress and losing this important Omni Hand just out of the blue, it makes more sense to keep it. And honestly, I think it's fine that we just keep the grab pack with the Omni Hand. So I thought instead, if we just lose the red hand, it's the same red hand we've had since Chapter 1, since in my rewrites we never lost our red hand. So there's some sentimental loss there, but I thought out of all of the grab pack hands that we have, the red hand is the one that can be lost without any real major consequence to it. And it allows us to keep the Omni Hand, as well as being able to use like the purple jump hand and the flare hand with more in different puzzles, instead of just losing them and then just getting a grab pack and having all new stuff to do without any of the previous stuff. So that's kind of my reasoning there. But after we go through this vent and it closes, we end up in the next area. So this next area has us falling through the vent into a large operating room, and in this room the lights would be on. However, outside of this room, the connecting hallways and other surgery rooms would all be dark, like pitch dark. Also in this room is a VHS tape, and it would be a tape of Miss Gracie talking to Eddie Ritterman about her methods of hypno brainwashing. This is to set up Miss Gracie / Lily as a bit more of an important character / kind of quasi main villain, as well as one of her gameplay mechanics, but we'll get to that later. From here, you will need to traverse through the halls alone, But you aren't entirely alone. There are toys here, broken, destroyed, and soulless. The hollow. They are byproducts of the prototype's testing and experiments down here. They would be toy lines that we have seen before, so Huggies, Smiling Critters, Long Legs, stuff like that. And while most of them would be the smaller versions of those toys, in line with like the smaller enemies that we faced before, some of them would be a little larger. Not bigger bodies versions, but more along the lines of like Baba Chops from base chapter 4, where they're a little larger, but they aren't huge. These would all be hunting us down, and we need to tread carefully. We need to watch every door, every vent, every hole in the wall, as they could contain an enemy that's ready to just jump at us. The flare hand can be used to drive away the smaller ones, but the larger ones we can only run and hide from. But as you traverse through this area, you will occasionally be guided by a mysterious voice coming over the intercom. He will tell you a direction to turn, a door to open, stuff like that. Eventually, he will lead us to the exit, which is one of those sterilization transfer rooms. Entering into this next section, we will find ourselves in a more office-like area. Cubicles, conference rooms, stuff like that. And this would actually take inspiration from a cut map from, I believe, chapter 1, which would have us explore a bunch of different Playtime offices. So it's taking inspiration from, I believe, that map from chapter 1. The voice over the intercom will then guide us to the central office, and that's where we will meet our guide for this chapter. Replacing Giblet, we have Preston. I thought it'd be fun to use a character that was set up more and teased more, and honestly has a bit more of an interesting design than Giblet. So using a character that has more setup and a better connection to the stuff going on here, I thought would work better as our leading guide, rather than, hey, random character number 502 shows up to help us and they do nothing. But once we meet Preston, he will tell us who he is and that he's been hiding down here for a while. The prototype calls the labs his home, but he never usually comes by this part of it. There's nothing really over here, so it's the perfect place to hide. He then says that he knows why we are here. We're here to help Poppy take down the prototype, but he's heard that we've gotten split up and believes that he can help us find Poppy again. He believes that she has been taken deeper into the labs. We will then need to follow him over to a doorway at the end of a hallway, but if you decide to stay and explore the map some more, you will find a large office with the name Ron Whitman on the door. Solving a simple little power puzzle will allow you to open the door and enter inside the office, revealing a room that would look kind of like Elliot Ludwig's office from chapter 2, just maybe a little less fancy, but something along those lines. And if you go over to the desk on Dr. Whitman's desk, you will find an adoption certificate for none other than Ollie himself, as well as a framed picture of him there too. This is for you guys to know that my version of Ollie isn't connected to Elliot Ludwig, but instead connected to Dr. Whitman, which, yes, does mean that Dr. Whitman used his own adoptive son to create the prototype. But once you find all of this lore, or you just want to move on anyway, you can go over and join back up with Preston. He will take us into the next section, which is the R&D department. This area would be full of testing rooms, equipment storage, and stuff like that. Following Preston, he will tell us that while he does know where Poppy is, this does come along with some bad news. That bad news being that Poppy is held in the middle of Miss Gracie's territory. He goes on to explain who she is. She was the most heartless of the upper Playtime staff, even worse than people like Sawyer. She would torture and brainwash the various toys who didn't comply. But after the hour of joy, the prototype took her and turned her into one of them, like Preston. She started to go insane until she turned her torture and brainwashing methods into a way to hunt. Her new body had given her new strengths that no one had predicted. And now she uses those strengths to keep her territory, ensuring that the prototype doesn't interfere with her. So a big change to Lily that I'm adding for this chapter is that she doesn't undergo 400 plus days of sitting in that room watching the tapes over and over again that like the prototype has her do in the base game. Instead, she knows exactly who she is. She's Miss Gracie and she knows that, but now she's been turned into one of the toys, the things that she hated and dreaded the entire time she worked here. So she's very much aware of who she is. She's not that insane in terms of like not remembering her name or anything like that, but she's insane in a whole slew of other ways because she's an absolutely maniacal person. But after Preston tells us who she is, he will stop at a scanner door and we will have to use the Omni hand to open it. And as the door is opening, we hear a distinct laugh echoing through the area, realizing that she's here. We would then enter a large cylindrical room, particularly the one from the base game where you can see the city off in the distance, just minus the city in the windows because that's not here in this rewrite, but it would be the same room essentially. And as we enter, a cutscene will start, where Lily will ascend from below us, from the catwalks below us, using her two smaller hair braids, kind of like Doc Ock's arms, keeping her raised above the ground, and she'll rise above us. She'll look down at Preston before turning to us. She smiles and says that we must be the outsider, the one from above, the savior. She's heard a lot about us and how we took down the other factions and fought our way here. But things are different down here. Mommy, Catnap, the doctor, they were all blind to the realities of this place. But she sees the truth, and soon we will too. Her larger central hair braid will then rise up in front of us and reveal Candy Cat's head underneath the braids. Its eyes will then light up, blinking fast and doing like the hypno spiral thing. Preston will tell us to resist, and we will need to use the pressure hand, we will be prompted to do so, and use that to push Candy Cat away. Lily will growl at us and say that one way or another we will come to see the truth, her truth. But for now, she will let her followers play with us. She then will descend back below the catwalks and into the depths. So this is to introduce not only her as the villain, as a character, and just kind of give her an introduction earlier in the chapter. This is also to introduce her kind of main gameplay mechanic, and that is the Candy Cat hypnosis thing. So how I imagine this gameplay would work, and this is more essential for later on, but I'll explain it here, is that Candy Cat is used to hypnotize people. That's hence the blinking and the spiraling eyes. And the gameplay would be kind of similar to the Cursed Huggy VHS in Chapter 3, where the longer that you try to resist, the more and more you are forced to stare at the TV. That's essentially what this is. So when Candy Cat first starts, it'll just kind of be like you can resist, look away, but as time goes on, you'll be more and more forced to stare into Candy Cat's eyes until given the chance for Lily to jump scare you. But you need to use the pressure hand to force Candy Cat away in order to not get, hypnotized and killed. But after that confrontation, Preston will tell us that that's why we need to be careful down here. And if we are going to fight the prototype and Lily, we need an upgrade. We follow him to the grab pack testing labs, and as we're heading over there, he will tell us that Playtime was working on an advanced green hand, one that could not only hold a charge indefinitely, but could even conduct temperatures, being able to heat up and cool down to extreme temps. So this is essentially just the conductive hand, but I thought it would be more fun to make it a green hand, because I like the green hand. So it really, all it is like a skin and name change. It's just the conductive hand, but I thought I'd just make it the green hand and make it like an advanced green hand just for the fun of it. But as Preston explains this to us, a little ding will go off on a makeshift watch that he's wearing, and he will tell us that he's got some business to look into. One of his informants says that they have some useful info for us. He will then tell us that this place should be pretty safe, but we should always keep our eyes open for any of Lily's followers, or the Hollow, or just anything, really. He'll take a vent in one of the walls, and we are left to traverse this area alone. This area is a little more open world, so you are free to explore, look around, that kind of stuff, but there is a clear endpoint to reach. But you can look around, find hidden lore, and the only real noteworthy thing to find here is a VHS tape of Poppy and the prototype taking place about a month or so after Poppy was created, and both of them are talking to each other, with Poppy talking about her dad, and Ollie saying that his own quote-unquote dad did this to him and turned him into a monster. Poppy will tell him that he isn't a monster, and we see that they do have a bit of a connection. They are friends. So this is supposed to set up their characters a little bit more before the inevitable confrontation scene later in the chapter. But moving on from there, eventually you will end up reaching said endpoint to this area, and you'll enter into a large, fairly empty storage room. But right at the center of this room is none other than Braun. He does the same old thing of spinning his head around, watching us, but this time he has the advanced green hand in his mouth. You can go up to him and grab the hand out of his mouth, and he won't do anything. After you take a few steps away from him, you'll hear movement, however, and if you turn around to look, you will see that Braun has moved and he is following you. That's right, folks, we have a Braun quote-unquote chase scene. For this part, we will have to take a path through various different testing zones and labs, with Braun following us in sort of a Weeping Angel type gameplay. So that's kind of why Miss Delight doesn't have that gameplay mechanic in my Chapter 3 rewrite, because Braun has it here, and I think it actually really works with Braun's gameplay mechanic of him constantly staring at us. He has sort of the Weeping Angel gameplay mechanic. But there is a slight twist to this. It isn't just a simple, don't look and he'll hunt you down, and look and he won't move. The longer you take to get through this quote-unquote chase, the faster he'll move when we aren't looking. So if you take way too long to get through this area, eventually you could turn around for 2 seconds and he could be like a long ways away, but then he'll still have enough time to catch up to you and jump scare you because he's moving so fast. So you'll want to make sure that you get through this area relatively quick while also still looking at him. But eventually you will end up reaching the end, which is a set of doors leading to the Neuro Labs, and we'll have to use the Omni Hand to get in, leaving Braun behind. So here in the Neuro Labs, this is where the memory puzzle would be. You'd have to kind of wander around for a second before finding it, but here you'll have to go around and collect the different memories to unlock a code to get through the door behind the machine. However, here, the differences are that there are a couple of more memories, and there are different memories for different experiments. So it's not all just Huggy Wuggy. But we'll go through all of them. The first memory is of Huggy Wuggy, and it would be the bad toy box one. But initially, we can't actually put the toys in the bad toy box, but Ms. Gracie will then flood the room with flashing lights and spirals. Not enough flashing lights to like actually cause issues for anybody playing the game, but just enough to show that like, hey, she's doing the hypnosis brainwashing thing, and eventually we will be forced to put the toys in the bad toy box. Memory 2 will be of Mommy Longlegs, and we are confined into a smaller room and forced to do the block game thing like Huggy does in one of his memories, but here we play as Mommy Longlegs doing that same game. When we inevitably fail the final round, Miss Gracie will flood the room with red gas, and we can hear Mommy Longlegs screaming out, terrified of it, just like Marie Payne, who she is, back in Chapter 3, that one VHS tape where we hear the story that she gets terrified of the red gas. That's what would happen here as a way of torture. But speaking of Chapter 3, Memory 3 is of Catnap, and it would be based on one of the like VHS teasers for Chapter 5, where he's like locked in that one room, and then you see him at the end, and where he's like out, he's escaped the room and he's in those hallways. And here we will play through those events. So we'll be stuck in one of the rooms, the prototype's friendly hand will show up and unlock the door for us, and we escape, roaming the halls, attacking anyone we see, and it would end with Playtime being able to sedate us. Memory 4 would be of Doughy, and it would be the scene where he kills his parents. We will be in control of him during this and are forced to commit those actions. Memory 5 will be of the prototype, specifically the scene that we saw at the start of this video, the VHS intercutting with the ad, and it will be us waking up, reaching our hand out, and Dr. Whitman asks if we can hear him. We would then look over to get the official face reveal of Dr. Whitman, who again asks if we can hear him. Ollie would then respond saying that he can, and he asks what we did to him. Dr. Whitman says that the surgery was successful, and with any luck, they will be able to use the data and discoveries here to help save Poppy. Ollie would then nod, saying that that is good, and that's what he wanted to have happen. He asks what's next, and Dr. Whitman says that they will have more tests to run if new potential experiments are to be conducted. Ollie is shocked, angry, and upset, and says that he didn't agree to become a test subject. He only wanted to help save Poppy. He then asks Dr. Whitman, his dad, if he lied to him in order to turn him into some sort of prototype. The memory ends before we can hear an answer. After this point, we have gotten our code and we are free to enter the room behind the machine. This next section is almost ripped straight from the game, where Huggy will return, chase us through some hallways, but this time we will have to use different things like jump pads and green hand door stuff to avoid him while he chases us. Eventually, we will reach an area of the labs where the brainwashing took place, and it would be kind of like the base game section where he roams around hunting us down while we have to solve different puzzles, but the difference here is that the location would be slightly different. It's more lab rather than whatever the rooms were in the base game, and they're a little bit larger with more interconnected hallways, meaning that we really can't see where Huggy is at any given time, making us have to be more cautious. But the puzzles that we have to solve would involve us using stuff like the advanced green hand and other hands like jump pads and pressure hands in order to activate 4 different switches, which will allow us to enter the lair of Miss Gracie, leaving Huggy behind. Walking into this area, we will see that we are on a balcony overlooking a huge room. Down below, there are a bunch of makeshift houses, and on the far side of the room is a large, cobbled together dollhouse, and that is Lily's home, something she made herself. A cutscene would start where we are grabbed by one of the yellow Huggy hands, only to see that it is Kissy Missy, and she is here with Preston. He tells us that his informant let him know that she was down here looking for us, and he was able to track us down to here. He then explains that this is it. This is Miss Gracie's home. Poppy has to be in there, the dollhouse. Preston says that he won't be much help down there, but he will try his best to distract as many of Lily's followers as he can, giving us a clearer shot to her. He wishes us luck and heads out again. We now need to descend a set of stairs with Kissy leading us down into the town. So this section would involve us working together with Kissy to solve puzzles and to avoid Lily's followers. Her followers are devoted to her and will attack on sight, but they are more aware than most other toys, being able to talk and even using things like weapons and even wearing armor. They would be from various toy lines like the Wuggies, the Critters, Mommy Longlegs type toys, maybe even a Bunzo or something. There would be various different toys, all brainwashed by her to follow her. But there would only be a small amount of them, as a distant alarm caused by Preston has drawn most of them away. Once we clear some obstacles and get past the followers, we can reach the front door of her home. Heading inside, we are prompted to look around. We can explore, and the house would be a similar layout and size to the base game, just a bit more messy and made out of scraps and metal and stuff like that, not something that Playtime actually built. But as you look around, it would appear that Lily isn't home. But when you go to explore the basement with Kissy, you'll find Poppy's cell, and before you can do anything, you get attacked and knocked out. Waking up, you can look out of the cell as Lily tells us that we need to stay put. Someone special wants to see all of us, and she wouldn't want to disappoint. She'll then wander off, and we get our reunion with Poppy. She will apologize to both us and Kissy for running away, and she says that she was scared and terrified of him, but her dad always taught her to be brave. She's done running away from things, and now she wants to really stand up against him. She tells us that we should start looking for a way out of this cell. At this point, gameplay resumes, and it becomes clear that we don't have our grab pack. That's right, surprise little section where we do end up losing our grab pack for like 2 minutes. Poppy would then notice a vent in the ceiling and has Kissy lift her up there. She opens it and climbs inside, and after a little bit, we actually hear the door unlock and Poppy is on the other side, having actually done something. We would then grab our grab pack, which is right there, and the 3 of us head out to face down Lily. Heading back up, we enter the main entrance area where Lily is waiting for us, along with a bunch of her followers. She knew we'd escape and has decided that the only way to keep us here is by force. This would be like an actual battle scene where us, Poppy, and Kissy would focus on taking out Lily and her followers. Obviously, we would be fighting Lily a little more, with Kissy and Poppy going after her followers, but it's all like one big brawl battle scene. As we fight Lily though, she can use a variety of different attacks. She could use Candy Cat, which would involve us using the pressure hand like the scene earlier. She could also attack with one of her other hair braids. In that case, we would use the flare hand or the green hand heat up thing and use that to slightly burn her hair, fending it off. Or she could do an even larger attack and we would need to use the purple jump hand to get out of the way. This would go on for a little bit before all of her followers are gone and we knock her down to the ground. A cutscene then starts where us, Poppy, and Kissy are standing over Lily like the Avengers. Then something starts shaking the area and Lily tells us that he's here. Turning, we see the prototype's hands pierce through the wall near the front door and he tears it open. His face then swings in the view before his whole body enters the room. The prototype is here. So quick pause on the story to briefly talk about my prototype redesign. So this image here provided by the Baldwin Birds 2, so big shout out to him. I had provided a sketch and he managed to turn my absolutely terrible sketch into something good. So big shout out to him there. But to go over my prototype redesign real quick before getting back to the story, a few major things to talk about. First of all, you can see that Catnap is a little bit more included. I know it's kind of ambiguous in this picture, but essentially he got like skinned and attached to the spider body of the prototype, and his fur can be there because his fur didn't burn in my version. But the major thing is having his face here, and this would be how the prototype releases the red gas. So just like how Catnap spews out the red gas, that's how the prototype spews out the red gas, is using Catnap's face. Now you can also see Mommy Longlegs' arm here, and something you can't see on this particular image but is on my original sketch and would be on like a 3D model, is that Mommy Longlegs' body and head would be attached to the side of the prototype. So it's not just her arm, it's like everything that he took from her in chapter 2 is attached to him here. So yes, she would be here, you just can't really see it in this image. Moving up a little bit, you can see that there's a connection between his torso and his lower body and between his torso and his head, so his neck. And both of those things would be extendable. So he can both extend out his torso and he can extend out his head via his neck. So both of those things would be extendable. That's how he's able to reach Catnap at the end of chapter 3. Looking at his actual body, I removed much of the official Jester design because I think it's a little weird to have him have an official Jester design when he's a prototype for Poppy. So this would be his prototype design as he was when he was created. And then moving up to his head, you can see that he does have the sort of Jester-ish design because I feel like it's something that you kind of have to keep. And this is from Vivian, who was a Fester the Jester Fox Bigger Bodies. When he killed her, he took her hat/ears because they have better hearing. So that's why he took those, so that he could have more enhanced hearing as he roamed around the location. And because it's a Jester thing. And finally, his face mask, his porcelain mask, it would be porcelain, is covering up a skull that would be underneath. So I just want to make that point clear. There is a skull, it's just underneath of this mask. And the major thing I wanted to do was get rid of the smile, because while I do think it's kind of cool, it doesn't necessarily make it creepy. I think having him have no mouth is a little bit creepier. I think it can add to even creepier scenes. So that's why I kind of made that choice. I think it just makes his design look a little bit cooler. But there's a very basic bare bones rundown of my prototype redesign. I could talk about it in a future video or something, but for right now, that's all you guys are getting. So let's get back to the story. So as the prototype shows up, we get caught off guard and Lily grabs us with her hair, tying up us and Kissy, but leaving Poppy. The prototype approaches and Poppy tells him that she isn't scared of him anymore. She's done running. He does a little like, wow, so brave, before saying that she shouldn't have run away in the first place. All he's ever wanted to do here is create a place where they are all safe, where everyone is happy. The key to that dream is a secret kept within himself and within Poppy. She fights back, saying that this is about more than just her, but the prototype fights back, saying that it's only been about her. This whole place, every experiment, everything, it all goes back to her. She's the most important thing here, the center of everyone's attention. He then turns to look at us, and to quote what he would say, "Isn't that right, Dad?" Revealing to everybody that us, the player, is Dr. Whitman, something that I'm sure a lot of you have already predicted. But this would be the official reveal that we are Dr. Whitman, the person who helped create the prototype and Ollie's adoptive dad. The prototype would then go on, saying that the secret within them both, the one that everybody's been looking for, is the need for food. Both himself and Poppy, they don't eat, they don't go hungry. Without the need for food, they could all thrive down here. We knew that, but we kept that secret locked away, forcing Sawyer and the others to keep prodding, poking, burning, all in an effort to unlock that secret. But now, there's a chance to make things right. He himself, the prototype, is too far gone for that secret to be found, but Poppy, she still holds it within herself. All she needs to do is sacrifice her life to save everyone else's. He gave up his humanity to save her life, so what's wrong about asking for a favor in return? There is one problem, however. He can't do this alone, and that's why he called us home. He sent out that letter bringing us back here. He needs our help. We can make up for our sins too. We can help him save everyone, and he will forgive us. He gives us that offer and asks for our response. Poppy speaks up, saying that this is wrong, and the two get into an argument in the background before us, the player, responds with no. Which does mean that we do talk. The prototype is taken aback, and even Poppy is a little shocked. Ollie then gets angry, saying that he offered forgiveness and this is how he gets treated. His own dad won't even help him. He goes to stab us, but Poppy yells out, telling him to stop. She pulls on his other hand and he swats her away, but that sends her careening into one of the nearby walls. He's immediately worried and surprised and upset that he did something like that. And even Lily gets surprised and she lets her guard down. Her hair lowers and Kissy, absolutely livid at the prototype, starts fighting him. They scuffle, the red gas gets out there, and eventually he runs off and Kissy runs to grab Poppy before leaving as well. We then regain control and we see that we need to fight Lily, who is the only one left there. She is pissed that we've basically ruined everything and trashed her home, and she starts attacking us. But this place is very unstable, and we need to start using the pressure hand to take out pillars and walls, all while avoiding Lily's attacks. Eventually, we are forced into one last quick time cutscene where Lily is complaining and angry at us, and we break one more pillar, causing the place to collapse, and as we get out, we see that Lily gets crushed, killed by the very place that she built. So our next move is to regroup with Poppy and the others. Preston meets up with us and leads us over to Poppy and Kissy. We all come up with a game plan, seeing that the other methods to take out the prototype have been taken off the table. Stuff like the red gas blowing up the labs, we can't do that anymore, so our only way to defeat the prototype is to do so conventionally. That means knowing anything about his creation process and his design. Which, yes, the player would technically know, but it's also been decades since we've created the prototype, so we need a little bit of a refresher. That's why we need to go find his schematics. And said schematics would be kept within Playtime's server archive. It's a location a ways away from there, isolated in case of an event. We'll have to take a train to get over there, and Preston leads the way as we all make our way down to the train. We reach the train platform and the others enter first, with Preston and Poppy going to start the train. As we enter, we get grabbed from behind by Huggy, who's managed to follow us down here. He's about to attack, but that's when he sees Kissy. He drops us and Kissy walks over. They have their moment and they reunite, and Kissy actually gets Huggy to revert to his classic smile, like her, but then he gets attacked and thrown to the wall. Kissy goes in to defend him, but she gets killed by the prototype. Yes, she is dead. We are forced to then leave and rerun over to the train as it starts moving. Jumping on, we get a very similar chase to the base game because I did think it was kind of fun, but the only major change is that the prototype would use some of our lines, Dr. Whitman's lines, with stuff like us saying that we'll never leave Ollie behind in an effort to make us feel bad for the things that we have done here. Eventually, we do reach the point in the chase where we have to jump off the train. We then jump off the train and it crashes, and us, Poppy, and Preston look to see if the prototype is dead. We then hear Poppy getting electrocuted/shocked and turn to see Preston shocking her with his little taser stick. Poppy collapses and Preston turns to us saying that he's no hero, at least not for us. So it's revealed that he was actually working with the prototype the whole time in order to get us to a point where he could turn over Poppy to him. We then turn to see the prototype bursting out of the debris, and he runs over. We don't turn to leave, but instead we face him down. He stops and he stares at us. Without saying a word, he stabs us and lifts us up in the air. He brings us over to the poppy gel and tells us that this is what we deserve. He drops us into the tank, and we get the scene where we go sinking down into the poppy gel. And in a voiceover, we hear memories from our past. We can hear Whitman and Ollie talking, laughing like father and son. We hear us like throwing a football outside the factory with Ollie. We also hear us telling Ollie that what needs to be done will help save lives. And we hear one last memory of Ollie telling us, Dad, that he's scared, and we tell him that everything will be alright. We'll never leave him. We promise. The screen then goes black before showing us the text death screen, telling us that we need to get back up, that there's still time to make things right. We then wake back up as the vat of poppy gel is tipped over and we tumble out of it. We cough and we see a yellow Huggy hand in front of us. Looking up, we can see that it's none other than Huggy Wuggy himself, and he's in a docile state, standing over us with his hand reaching out as if concerned. That's right, Huggy Wuggy is joining the group. He is now on our side. So instead of having Giblet, some random bloke we've never met before, look at us with a bunch of sad eyes, instead we have Huggy Wuggy, our first ever enemy, joining our team. We would then get up and he joins us as we make our way into the Playtime server archives. Heading inside, the room would be a round room with a tall server spire in the middle, and using the Omni Hand, we can activate the ability to restore system backup, which would allow us to access the archives. 2 levers need to be pulled in order to do this, and upon interacting with the one we are told to, a cutscene would start where we pull one and Huggy would pull the other. Sparks fly and lights flicker, and you can hear the doctor's laugh echoing over the intercoms, and his eyes even flicker on a few of the screens. It then all stops, and we turn to Huggy, who looks at us, until a splat sound is heard from behind us. Both of us turn to look at a little pile of turquoise gloop on the ground. Then a ton of dough comes falling from the ceiling and forms into none other than Doughy himself, who, in a far more serious voice, says his iconic line, "Hiya there, pal."